Good evening and welcome to tonight's Board of Aldermen meeting for June 10th, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have no special guests today because the elementary school kids are partying on summer vacation, so we have to do it alone. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trish, can we get a roll call? And you're muted. Trish is muted.
Okay, I couldn't unmute. Now I can.
Okay.
All right, Alderman King. Alderman King,
Here.
He's here.
Alderman Farrar, Alderman Adamowski, Alderwoman Tar,
Here.
Alderman Cassetti,
Here.
Alderman Janetti,
Here.
Alderman Nutt,
Here.
Alderman Hardy,
Here.
Alderman Yalman,
Here.
Alderman Rivers,
Here.
Alderman Mamone,
Here.
President Schuert,
Here.
Alderman Levinsky,
Okay.
He's here.
Alderman Durante.
Here.
That's 12 present.
12 and 2. I declare quorum. Before we start, I'd like to add one item to the agenda that was carried over from when I wasn't here, the soccer request.
Make a motion to add that, Josh. It's Tony.
I'll add that to old business since you guys had talked about it already. Motion to add to old business by Mamone. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so I will pick that up later. And we'll move on to public session. So just a reminder, anyone from the public is welcome to speak to address the Board of Aldermen. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less since we have a lot of people here. And one-time speaking per person. And please identify yourself for potential follow-up by the city for the public record. Anyone from the public wish to speak tonight? Please make yourself known.
Hello, my name is Chris Antezzo Senior, and this is in reference to the 116A Jewett Street. With I was given blight liens on the property, and there's some other issues going on there too. I'd just like to talk to the board about that when it's proper time.
Executive session.
Executive session.
Yeah, that's at the end of our meeting, an executive session.
At the board's pleasure, we could certainly invite a resident in to talk about the matter. It is on the agenda for tonight, so up to
Okay.
the board, but you can invite him in. And then, sir, generally executive session happens later on in the meeting. It's
Okay.
a little difficult to give a
Right.
rough time estimate, but I'd say usually 8 o'clock or after, depending on how the flow of the meeting goes. But it's the last thing on the
Okay,
John, there's a bit of a larger agenda, so Chris, just for transparency, it might be a little bit longer than 8. So
okay, I'll check. Should I just check in at 8 then? And because last meeting I was there, but I wasn't aware what I was supposed to do, so I didn't know.
Yep.
I thought you were gonna call me, so I didn't know. Okay, so I'll check back around a little before 8 or something, see where things are.
Thank you, sir.
if you want to
All
hang out
right.
or just dial back in, that's fine.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak?
Josh, I'd like to say something. It's Ann Lynch.
Yes, go ahead.
Ann Lynch, 15 Birchwood Drive. There are 2 things that I would like to discuss tonight. First, I am speaking on behalf of Assumption School as I am a member of the school board. I saw in the boat minutes that it finally was approved to reimburse Assumption School over $23,000 for the sidewalk project that was completed in October of 2023. I don't know why it took close to 2 years to get the school the money, but I certainly hope that the Board of Aldermen and Women approve this reimbursement tonight to get the money to the school as soon as possible. The second thing I would like to discuss is, where's the street sweeper? Years ago, you always, every spring, used to see the sweeper up and down all over the city. Now that the weather's getting nice, I'm outside walking more, and some of our streets really need the street sweeper. So I hope we could dust it off and we could bring it back out and start cleaning up our streets, because a lot of them need it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
It's been raining.
And I believe
It hasn't been, I'm sorry, but it hasn't been raining all spring, and I didn't see it last year either.
It
Thank
hasn't
you.
been? Wow.
It wasn't raining last year either, Sheila. Don't you work in Shelton now?
It's been raining a lot, actually.
the Public Works is on tonight, so I'm sure your comments are well received. Thank you. And the other item is on the agenda for approval. Thank you. Someone else?
Bill Phipps.
Bill Phipps, you're next.
Good evening, Josh and members of the board. Bill Phipps, 27 Johnson Street.
Bill.
And just a couple of things I noticed from the agenda. Tony's letter to you folks regarding transfer station fees.
Number 3, time clouds.
John, can you mute everybody? He did.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, about the transfer station fees for out-of-towners. And I was a bit confused because I didn't know out-of-towners were in any form allowed to use our transfer station. I thought it was strictly for Ansonia people. But if in case I'm wrong or it's going to be changed or whatever, I think we should probably think long and hard about it, because we could wind up getting a lot of activity from Derby and Seymour, because to parts of their town, ours is a lot more convenient than theirs. And also, does Derby allow non-residents? Because some of our people on the hilltop could maybe avail themselves of the Derby landfill right there on Pine Street. But in any case, if it is indeed allowed, which I was surprised, before we can do it, you got to fix the scale, I guess. And the second thing is the condemnation of resolution is also
You mute these people.
Oh,
anyway.
easy.
Oh, gee, what happened to Joe? You got a hat. Anyway, the condemnation resolution that is part of the agenda tonight. And personally, I read it and I said, whoa, I got a very uneasy feeling. And I don't think it would be wise for us as the town of Ansonia to do something like that. This is like in-house squabbling, and we can get it done on our own. We should say around the kitchen table rather than put it out there in the minutes, and we know what's going to happen to that. And I don't think it'll be good for anybody. Third one is the boot program. A question I had, is the boot program in effect? I know we've kicked it around, talked about it, so forth and so on. And the bit of information in the packet really didn't say anything about it. So it's a question about that, if it's active, and where do you leave the car with the boot on it? Do you tow? It's very confusing. But that's my contribution for tonight's agenda. Anyway, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Josh, can I ask Mr. Phipps a question or just a comment?
Sure.
Bill, did you reach out to Cara and tell her the same thing, that she should have had that conversation with City Hall before she passed it through the legislature?
No, Tone, probably we don't want to get into a back and forth. But in any case, The only thing I would say is that I know that anytime you guys on the board, you know, you can't even say your name. You're always talking about her in the third person. And everybody knows there's not good feelings between you. But I think that's something that you can take care of in-house around a table, and it doesn't have to be put out in the public. That's all.
I think it's a little too late for that, Bill, but thanks for the words.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to address the board tonight? Let's look around. Anyone else from the public? Thomas Egan, you're up.
Thank you, President Schuart. Thomas Egan, 20 Platt Street, Ansonia, Connecticut. We got three things to say tonight, and the first one's probably going to shock you. I like what Mr. Mamone wrote. They're out of town, and it could be a cost-saving measure. I think it's fantastic. The other thing I want to talk about, I saw that the city assessor now has a vehicle. I know there's a lot of out-of-town plates, out-of-state plates. I think if they're living here in Ansonia, using the Ansonia resources, that they should be paying Ansonia taxes. And I think that's a good thing. And it'll help increase our voter registration. The final thing I want to discuss, and I saw this universal condemnation of Representative Cara Rochelle. And it had me thinking, going back to my younger years when I was in college, and there was a president, Ronald Reagan, great president, and Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House. And these two, they couldn't be any more different. One's a conservative icon, the other is a proud liberal. But as much as they fought day to day, they shared a drink a night and they respected each other. And they got things done because they didn't treat politics like war. They treated it like a public service. And my thoughts are, before you go through universal condemnation, why don't you hear her out and see what she has to say? You know, bring her to an alderman meeting. I don't know. It's just my thoughts before, everything just spills out. It's just a lot of shouting. Either way, appreciate your time tonight. I hope the budget gets voted on and approved in some form, finally. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Speakers from the public. Yes, Lisa Glazer, you're up.
It was.
Was up. Maybe not. All right. Any others? Second call. Final call for public session. Seeing none, we'll close the public session, move on to public official session, starting with Mayor Cassetti. And you're muted.
How about now, guys?
Good to go.
Good to go. President Schuart, members of the Board of Aldermen, residents of the great city of Ansonia. I want to begin tonight by thanking all of you on this board, and most importantly, the people of Ansonia. Over the last few weeks, through our first ever budget referendum process, you've made your voices loud and clear. Keep our taxes low. And tonight, I am proud to stand here and say you were heard. We are wrapping up this year's budget with the lowest tax rate possible, achieving through a 0% spending increase for the city side, while still investing $1 million more in our schools. That's not easy to do, but we did it together. Now let me speak plainly about what happened last week up in Hartford. Our state representative, Cara Rochelle, stood on the House floor and claimed, on live television no less, that $40 million from the sale of our WPCA had disappeared. That's a serious accusation, and it is 100% false. I've already asked our finance department again to walk through line by line how those funds were used. And guess what? They were used exactly how we said they would be and exactly how we told our bond rating agencies they would be used. To support city operations, avoid huge tax increases, and keep Ansonia affordable for our working families, our seniors, and our small businesses. You know, now look, I'm not shy. I speak my mind, and sometimes I say things a little more colorful than others. But I've never used this office to persecute and prosecute a political opponent. What we saw from Representative Rochelle was a pure political stunt, conspiracies, half-truths, and wild claims to justify an unprecedented piece of legislation aimed at hurting her own city. Let me be very clear. We have no issue talking to MFAC. In fact, we welcome any honest review of our finances. You know why? Because the facts are on our side. Here's what the facts say. We have a strong AA- bond rating, the same as Shelton, one of the wealthiest towns in the state. We have a clean audit history. We're projecting a 10 million plus fund balance for fiscal year 2026. And maybe more impressively, we've gone from being the second most distressed community in Connecticut to the 18th. That's real progress. That doesn't happen by accident. So no, I will not apologize for our taxpayers first philosophy. And the easy answer would be to say we should have been paying higher taxes all along. Well, tell that to the single mom trying to afford groceries. Tell that to a senior on a fixed income. Tell that to a small business owner trying to keep the lights on. I won't do it. Not now, not ever. You know what? And if the people of Ansonia ever decide they don't want a mayor who fights to keep taxes low, then I'll step aside. More than happy to. But until then, as long as I am your mayor, it's taxpayers first, period. Now let me shift to something more exciting. Progress. We are moving full steam ahead on the Nolan Field revitalization project. This is going to be the new home of the Ansonia Chargers, a beautiful turfed multi-sport facility that our kids, families, and athletes deserve. You'll see first look at the final designs tonight. At the copper and brass site, we are actively working on plans to create a new revenue stream, turning the long vacant industrial land into an asset for the city. You'll be hearing more tonight about responses to our first RFP. And finally, we expect to see plans go before planning and zoning later this month for 501 Main Street. The main phase of the Farrell redevelopment. That's another piece of Main Street brought back to life. This is what progress looks like. Lower taxes, strong credit, revitalized properties, investment in our future. To this board, I thank you for your hard work and for staying focused on what really matters. And to our residents, I thank you for your trust and for speaking up. You've guided us through this process and we've listened. We've proven that in Ansonia, you can be fiscally responsible city and make bold investments. You can be working class and financially strong, and you can lead with common sense and still get things done. Let the critics talk. We'll keep working. Taxpayers first. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thanks, Mayor. Next up, we have John Marini, Corporation Counsel.
Mr. President, members of the board, to follow up on what Mayor Cassetti had to say, he brought up an important statistic that during your watch over the city of Ansonia, we've been brought from the number 2 most distressed community in Connecticut down to the 18th, right? We know distressed community, a lot of factors go into it. A lot of it is also income level of the residents, right? It's the welfare of our, of the population. And that has been improving, right? So I want to point out that that's 18 out of 25 distressed municipalities within the state. So you're almost moving right out of that category entirely. And so on behalf of the mayor's office and all of us, thank you for everything you've done to move the city in the right direction. Beyond what we talk about in terms of taxes, in terms of projects, it shows in the numbers. It's objective. Beyond that, I want to point out Kurt Miller is going to talk more about the WPCA proceeds. This comes up a lot, and most recently it's been put right in the spotlight up in Hartford. Of course, there's easy answers to it. The bulk of the funding went to keep taxes responsible. Other funds went into investments to generate more revenue into the future, pay off debt, etc. Kurt's going to drill into more of that exactly once again tonight, but I can give a little spoiler that the long-awaited audit, which was held up on the Board of Education side, is nearing conclusion. And we do believe to have an audit within the month without putting timetables on it. Right? We do believe it's right around the corner. And Kurt will talk a little bit more to that when we get to his portion. In the meantime, I do want to turn to the budget directly, because as you know, we left off on a cliffhanger. We came up with the numbers that we needed to be at to get this budget to be as low as humanly possible for our taxpayers. There was a 0% increase on the city side. It was $1 million on the school side to ensure that they had the appropriate money to operate, given the funding from the level of funding from the state. But on our side, we had about 143,000 that we needed to be more specific about, right? That we needed to define in terms of cuts to make this work. And we were looking at a worst case scenario where we were looking at wages, either layoffs or concessions. And as I told you at our last meeting, I was going to do everything within my power to ensure it doesn't come to that worst case scenario. So I worked with Kurt and I worked on my own a bit, and we did come up with a solution that really is a constellation of factors, but it includes new reliable revenue, savings to non-wage items, for example, some savings in health insurance, and some other positions where we have departures where we do not need to make immediate replacements. But a big part of this is some revenue. And I want to share that with you tonight. And actually, it's a follow-up to one of our residents that spoke. And I can say, definitely the city is on the same page as that resident, Attorney Egan, 100%. As you know, we've had an issue with out-of-state motor vehicles flooding the city. Who here hasn't seen the New York plates, Massachusetts, New Jersey plates coming from all over, right? We know there's an issue, and we've been taking steps to try to address that, equipping our blight department, our building department with some tools. But we realize that we need to figure out a better way for a smaller city to handle a very big problem. That's why yesterday we put out an RFP that I put together, a request for proposals, for essentially automation of a collections process, an identification and collections process for unregistered motor vehicles. So this would be a system that targets vehicles that are not registered properly in Ansonia or not registered properly in the state of Connecticut, and will work with the city directly through our assessor's office to target those vehicles and their owners and bring them on to the tax rolls. In addition to that, thanks to your support, we have legislation on the city books for a fine enforcing the state law mandating that you be registered in Connecticut X amount of days after you have moved here, right? So we have an additional law to enforce with a penalty, but of course, the meat and potatoes of this is the tax revenue that we're losing. This will target new revenue, not revenue that we are having difficulty collecting, revenue that we are not accounting for at all. That's totally off the books. So revenue entirely new to the city. Best estimate for this conservatively within a year, 150,000. However, more reasonably, when you take a look at other cities our size, other grand lists our size, and certainly other cities that have the same problem, because we have a very large unaddressed problem, you're looking at perhaps 300 to 500,000 per year in terms of newfound revenue from this initiative. So the RFP is out, legal ad is out. The bid comes due later this month. We'll put together a review panel consisting of myself, David Graybosch, our assessor, and we will be using the criteria outlined in the RFP to evaluate the bidders and bring them back to this board at our very next meeting, for next month's meeting, for you to make the decision on the final acceptance of whatever the prevailing bid should be. So very positive news. And with that, we can confidently move forward with this budget without layoffs, without having to see concessions. Additionally, in turning,
Yep. Question: is there a fee or a subscription for this, or is it a portion? Is it like a percentage of the total revenue brought in?
they
Like,
take.
how's that getting paid
So I'm going to leave it obviously to the. We don't know what the bidders will propose. I will say every company that we've researched and looked into takes the fee out of their collections, so there is no actual fee apart from the contingent fee that they're getting on each of the newly identified motor vehicles that they're bringing in. So there's no payments to the company directly. They're going to take out of what they bring in, but that will be up to them, right, to put forth to us in their proposal. So we'll have all of the facts once their proposals come in.
Thank you.
I want to turn radically, right? We're going to shift from budgets and motor vehicles to Nolan Field. So we're at a point in the process where I do need input from this legislative authority. We're about ready, and the company Field Turf, which has been making rapid progress. We're very pleased with their rapid progress doing the excavation work, the groundwork at Nolan Field. The main field, Field A, football field, if you will, is pretty much dug up. They're ready to order the turf. But before you can order the turf, they need to have an understanding of what the colors are going to be, what the lines are going to look like. And so I have a rendering, a proposal of that layout. We've run this by Athletics Director Brockett. Josh and I have actually had some conversations with Field Turf on the topic, and we believe this to be an acceptable outcome, but we don't want to move forward until we've run this by the board and gotten your input. It is, of course, very important to make sure that we can make this selection in a timely manner so we could order the turf so the project can be done in time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share and then explain. Can you see that? So right now, it's broken down mainly to the colors of the lines. So under this board's directive and pursuant to the final addendum, multi-use football, soccer for both of the fields. You'll notice that right now we only have
Football.
just trying to say, just would advise if you have your phone on, just to mute if you are, so we could all hear.
Jody is the one where the sound's coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we know the primary color for a sport is white. So on the football field, you have white for football. If soccer is going to be the primary on the other field, which is not yet being prepped for design, presumably white would be the lines for soccer on field B. That brings up the question what the secondary sport should be colored. Yellow is often used, but in talking with Field Turf, we came to this idea to use blue, Carolina blue or lagoon blue, and that's illustrated here. So you see the football in white and you see the soccer in blue. And the proposal would be the opposite for field B. It would be soccer in white and football in blue. So the blue is not as eye-popping and distinct as a yellow, but it certainly is more distinctive than something like a neutral gray. And it was our thought in talking all together that perhaps this would be a good nod towards Ansonia colors, keeping it a shade of blue. The coach, Coach Brockett, or the former Coach Brockett, Our athletics director had a great suggestion, which Field Turf incorporated, which is to do alternating paneling on the football field. So you see that represented here in the design. But what it does is the shading gives it the impression of a freshly cut field with the alternating strips. Also, you see Ansonia and Chargers in the end zones. There is a question as to whether they should remain like that or be flipped. I think the idea might be that when you're sitting in the stands, you read it left to right, Ansonia Chargers. But certainly when you're looking at it from coming onto the field, it says Chargers Ansonia. That is a detail that we do need to pin down. So again, your input on any of this. And we have directed Field Turf that the logo needs to be prominent. There are some designs where the lines run through the logo. This will be a design where the lines stop at the logo. And although it's not clearly indicated here, those soccer lines are intended to run under the lettering, not above the lettering. So that way the end zone lettering, the end zones, and the logo are prominent in the design. And we do believe that this is going to make, when looking at it from afar or from the bleachers, despite multi-use, the football field will look very distinctly like a football field, and the soccer field will look very distinctly like a soccer field, yet the lines will be more than adequate for play, for multi-use play. And given this is sports, we anticipate, more input and suggestions than anything else, even the budget. So, we want to be sure that we're putting this before this body, as this body obviously was the determinative vote and the key factor as to why we're even here talking about this project. Without your support and your vote, this would not be happening.
And John, I remember the athletic director had requested a mock-up of the logo in white in the center, not the dark blue. I don't know if
So that's one thing we didn't touch on. Yeah, they didn't get us back one in white, but I could certainly see, I guess it all depends on visibility. I could certainly see white being a preference. Perhaps white bordered with blue.
Can we have it the same way as the end zones? Blue with white around it, or white with blue around it?
Oh, like a disc, like a colored disc.
Well, like
Or
where
outline.
Ansonia Charger is outlined in white,
Yeah.
or have a white one outlined in blue.
Yeah. Do you mean like the logo would be like a blue circle and then the inside would be white, like that?
No, the emblem itself being outlined, then it'll bring it out more.
Yeah. Okay. So just like an outline around it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
do believe
It would
that's.
bring it out more
Good.
if you do it in blue, but if you do it in white and you outline it in blue, it would bring the white out more. That's just like in the end zones where the Ansonia is outlined in blue, it brings out the Ansonia. I don't know.
I do think it could pop more.
I just think it would bring it out more.
Joe Cassetti?
Yes, could it be turned 90 degrees?
The logo.
Yeah.
So I think the intention was to have it be that way for the folks in the stands when you're in the stands watching the game, right? So you see that, and I believe that's the purpose of their layout. That's why they have it left to right from the stands and not from where we're looking at it. Because if you're in the stand, you're going to see the logo properly and you're going to see the Ansonia Chargers properly. But again, we defer to you in terms of what you think aesthetically makes sense.
You're coming into the stadium though, wouldn't you want it to be Ansonia Chargers, like everybody coming in sees the Ansonia first?
And
That's a fair point.
then you spend the entire game looking at it upside or backwards.
It's just backwards then when you're in the stand watching the game.
I think every home team has their logo facing the home team, in any football stadium.
Yep.
So I think this is the way.
Okay.
That is correct.
Well, it should be turned 90 degrees.
No, if you go to other fields, their logos are actually turned towards the stand.
Right, when it's in a stadium, when it's around it, it's right side for the home team.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's positioned correctly, I believe, based on what I can see.
I mean, see if we're sitting here in the stands
Yeah, it's pretty.
watching the game, and now it looks correct.
That's better.
Oh, that's how you're gonna see it if you go to a game.
Yeah, if you're sitting over, you see my cursor. If you see, so you're sitting over there, Alderman Cassetti, and that's
He sits more to the right, John. I think he's down in the
the
30 yard.
You're over
My
here.
drone will pick it up.
Unless
So
you
you-
just put Chargers on both sides, like the Jets, both sides.
No,
Let's not do anything like the Jets, please.
exactly.
Hey,
Sorry, Bobby. Sorry, Joe.
John, is that a dark blue border that surrounds the entire left side of the complex there?
It is.
That's pretty sharp.
It is.
Yeah, I like that.
that pop, that's nice. That pops.
Hey, John, the rest of the left field, that big open space there, what is going there? Do we know?
There's nothing slated there. However, there has been talks for potential, temporary Little League use in that area. But there's nothing right now slated for blank space.
Can you either yard stripe that for a Pop Warner practice or something along those lines, or even some of the, I don't know if the flag kids could use something like that, because
Elements could be added, and it certainly could be line striped. Remember, you
Mhm.
also have practice for Pop Warner on the other side because you
Yeah.
have football markings on the other field.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree.
Little
I-
League had expressed an interest in maybe a little extra space. So we're going to move to that portion once we get to that portion. But there have been talks about, ensuring Little League had a home. And the idea is, of course, that they would share it with softball, the turfed field on the other side with the lighting. But they did inquire about maybe some extra space in this corner, in this
Yeah,
empty.
just trying to think about maximizing space, because it looks, you look at everything, every corner of this is usable so far, and then you have just that, the left outfield is kind of just open, right? Is there potential to do something with that one wouldn't interfere with, the baseball in any way and potentially get some use out of it? So, okay.
John,
Thanks, John.
do they only need an answer on this left side of the complex for now?
Yeah,
right?
we're not to field B at all.
So
So
they-
there's
So
no.
there could be discussions about what
Hello,
the soccer-
hello.
what the soccer preference would
Good.
be.
How are you?
Patty, you're not on mute.
We're hearing
Mute.
conversation.
There won't be a circle around the logo then, right?
The circle will be that blue circle that is the soccer, right? But it'll be that
Yes.
light blue color.
Yeah, I like Joe Genetti's idea of possibly exploring an outline around the logo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
punching
think
it out.
it'll help it'll pop, particularly with
Do the
line.
logo in white with the blue outline to match the sides.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we should actually stay with the blue and outline it, because everything in the schools and on the shirts are all
Right.
blue. So
Yeah,
Oh,
I think a small white outline will just help it pop more though, John, as opposed to a big white circle in the middle on the
Yeah.
50-yard line.
Yeah, I think, okay, hold on. Unfortunately, we do have some people that really dislike the city of Ansonia and like to bomb our Zoom meetings. So I had to turn it off. I'm sorry.
Well, that circle might have to stay for soccer, correct?
It's going to stay, yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine. But if you just outline the blue Charger, that'll look awesome. That'll really bring it out.
yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
All right.
What do you guys think of the light blue versus yellow? It does make it look pretty, pretty dominant for the football front.
Looks good that way.
yeah, it looks good, because on the other side it will be a reverse, right?
So the other side, it's meant to be white for soccer and then blue for football. So it will be, have that blue element, that blue theming throughout the whole complex.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how
We
that's
thought
going to
that
look.
maybe that because we were wrestling. So Josh and I were talking to Field Turf and trying to wrestle over the yellow. Obviously, the yellow is traditional for a secondary sport, but the yellow, of course, has nothing to do with the Ansonia colors. And the blue has very good visibility ratings. A lot of times you'll use it for the third sport, for example, if it's lacrosse or rugby. And it just seems to go better with the overall color scheme while taking nothing away from the play.
What do you need from us?
Well, I want to, obviously, a decision like this is a pretty momentous decision, so I wouldn't leave it to staff to make, right? So I need you as the Board of Aldermen to discuss as you are and let me know, what direction to go in. You've already given some input, but this is the city's project, right? No one person's. So, we're looking for some directives and we want to try to order this. We want to give Field Turf the okay as soon as we can so they can get the turf ordered in time.
So you need a motion to outline this in white and go with the design with the blue on the side, on this other side, the light blue,
Yep.
as we discussed.
This is just the football field.
Yep.
The left side. It's got nothing to do with the right side just yet.
But anticipating if we do this, it's pretty much going to make the choice obvious that on the other side, we're going to want to correspond. So in a way, when you're deciding this, you should be at least thinking in your mind about the other side.
Yeah, which means that field is going to predominantly be sprayed like a light blue color for all of the yard markings, the indicators, the end zone and everything. It's going to look pretty, I think I'll say silly with the whole thing being light blue and then having, the white lines for soccer. But again, that's why I think we should handle that separately.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, Tony, the opposite. I thought it was going to be in Ansonia blue colors for soccer, and then the football markings would be in light blue.
Right.
Joe, it's like a sky blue color. So you're going to have all of your yard markers. Everything is going to be like a sky blue color, like a pale blue.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I thought you meant like there was going to be predominantly the blue, that sky blue on everything, but I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, the field B, the idea of the field B would be white for soccer and then blue, that same sky blue, light blue for the football.
Well, I would recommend having them do a mock-up of the traditional
Yeah.
for the soccer side. They may want white with yellow, for that side. They're not really binding to be, I like the idea of it being themed together, but you also don't want it to look clownish, on the other side. I do like it for the football because it really does.
Just
pop.
separate the motion so you could have, we could talk about it later because he needs the vote for the left side now. So
My motion is only for the side anyway.
okay, all right.
Okay,
Just
so
wanted to make sure we had that distinction in there, Chicago.
Do we
you're
have a
making the motion?
mock-up for the other side?
They
John?
did not give me a mock-up for the side B.
Rivers, you made a motion?
I second it.
What was it?
To go with the outline around the logo and to keep the colors that are there. The light blue is for the soccer, and the way that the grass is striped on this picture, like that.
Okay.
As discussed.
Right. Okay. There you go. So I think.
As pictured. All right. So motion by Rivers. Is there a second on that?
Yeah. That was Joe.
I second.
Oh, Cassetti second. Okay. Any other further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm going to abstain, Josh.
One abstention. Mamone. All right. All right. So moving on. What else do you got, John? Anything?
All right, that brings me to the end of the report. Thank you very much. Pending any other questions. We have other stuff obviously on the agenda tonight concerning legal and other matters, so keep it moving along.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Corporation Counsel from the Alderman? Yes, Joe Cassetti.
I had a question concerning the Nature Center, the budget for the Nature Center. I heard you say that the city side remained flat, but they're asking to keep the custodian. Is that still in there?
If as long as it was in there at the last, in our last version, right? We didn't make any of the cuts that we were projecting, but obviously cuts have been made along the way. If there is an issue with the custodian, I can tell you that we would revert to our policy of having, as always planned, Public Works perform rotating custodial services as a sort of a custodial hub. And we have city custodians that could be assigned, thanks to the negotiations, to different buildings. So
Yeah.
there's an ability to be able to use Public Works unit custodians throughout the city as needed, rather than having a custodian out there in one unit. I think the effort was to try to keep a dedicated custodian, but if not, to achieve efficiency by using up the pool of custodians to service all buildings, including the nature center. So there will be no scenario where there is no custodian for the nature center. This nature center will have a custodian one way.
Very
or
busy
another.
place.
Definitely.
And it would go very badly if they didn't keep that up.
Question is
And,
how it's addressed in the budget, not that they get one. They will have a custodian one way or the other.
how about the full-time ranger?
I don't believe that I defer to Kurt as we get to the budget to dive into exactly where we are with what we're approving, because I don't want to misspeak.
All right, as far as WPCA, I bring my grandson to school. I travel up the north end on North State Street. I have to go around the sweeper, which is on duty. So that is not an issue as far as I'm concerned.
And Public Works maybe could opine a little bit, because I know that was brought up. And if not, we'll see if we can get someone on.
It is out there.
All right. No other questions for John? All right, let's move on. Do we have an economic development update? Sheila Lee.
Yes, I am here to provide that, an update on some of our projects. Let's start with State Street. All right, so I like to meet with the aldermen in that ward to discuss letters that'll be going out shortly with maps to show the proposed improvements and plans for each property showing the impact. And when we're talking about impact, we're talking about things like reconstructing concrete sidewalks, new driveways, new retaining walls, new chain link fences, and turf, the addition of turf. And in some instances, there are new driveways that will be constructed and handrails and et cetera. But I will talk with Alderman Adamowski and Alderwoman Tarr about those letters and share them with so they can help to answer any questions, but we'll have our engineers out there to talk with each individual property owner in preparation for the work that's going to finally be started. If we go down to SHW, the Total Wrecking Company is out there and they are performing excavation for the fuel cell construction project. So they're excavating where the roadway will be and removing contaminated soil and excavating in the northern portion of the property where the fuel cell pad is going to be located. And once completed with that, they'll begin the demolition. Let's see. We had a kickoff meeting with the DOT for the Riverwalk. And that's going to be beginning a right of way process, which the state will be conducting for us on our behalf. And it's important, we will have a public hearing or public meeting, or informational session, but this Riverwalk project is important because the alignment of the road, the new access road, once we have secured the funding for that project, will line up with the Riverwalk along Riverside Drive and out to exit 19. We are anticipating a grant for the sidewalks in the fourth ward, approximately $800,000. We'll have more to report on that. When we hear. Sorry, did someone say? Okay, no. We got, as you know, money to renovate, small cities money to renovate the John J. O'Sullivan. No, is that correct? I hope that's right. The elderly housing complex, the Ansonia Housing Authorities.
James J. O'Donnell.
James J. O'Donnell, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. For construction, a roof replacement, exterior doors, elevator and generators. And that project is ongoing, began on June 2nd. So that is well underway. The animal shelter project, it has already begun and
Bullshit.
has been, yeah, okay. So anyway,
Same place or different location?
No,
There's-
same place.
Okay, just a reminder to everyone, we could hear vulgar comments, so please don't disrupt the meeting.
Please mute Patty with an I.
You?
Thanks.
So the excavation has been done. They hit asphalt on the first layer, and the second layer they hit asphalt again. The architect has indicated that, you know, they have been trying to coordinate schedules, and that is why there was a pause in the construction, but seems to be moving along. There's also power generation issues that we need to talk through in order to make sure there's enough power for the public works facility and the reconstructed or renovated animal shelter. I believe the SHW, we did put out an RFP for SHW. We did get a response from Alianca, which we will be discussing further, but they've asked for some additional time, and they would like to talk to us more about what they're planning for that site. And John, I don't know if you want to, Johnson Controls had sent us a video that they, they created based on a vision that the city had for the SHW site. And I don't know if we're ready to play that tonight.
Yes, so we could play that tonight, and obviously this is the company we are working with, the city has been partnering with to develop the fuel cell. As we've kind of explained over the course of the last several months, the overall vision for this portion of the site is to develop a fuel cell, but not just a fuel cell for energy and cost savings, a fuel cell to entice other users to the site, users such as data centers that would not only pay the city value through a lease, but also purchase power from the fuel cell, thereby purchasing power from the city. So what we're talking about is revenue streams, additional revenue streams coming from copper and brass to the city, addressing the city's need for growing revenue. And of course, that all goes back to keeping taxes down and keeping our projects and our services moving forward. So this is the first in-depth look that you're going to see visually from Johnson Controls about what they can envision that first portion of the site, you talk about SHW, the portion that's right at Main Street, evolving into. So I'm going to see if we could take a look at that together.
There, and then it disappeared.
Hold on. Can you see that?
There it is.
There's sound. Where's,
There's audio for this?
can you, yeah, can you play the audio?
The audio may not come through, so just imagine very dramatic music playing.
I like the audio.
John, you want me to play some guitar while this is,
All right.
Why isn't the audio coming through? It's weird.
Bingo.
Oh, nice,
That's a beautiful conversion.
nice.
Wow.
Wow. Very nice.
So we'll post that audio included on the city website for residents to take a look at.
thank you. Any questions for economic development tonight from the Alderman?
Yes, I have a comment for Sheila because I haven't really bothered her in a while. But that's going to be a very long street to get to exit 19. You know where exit 19 is at now, Sheila?
What's it called now? The new exit 12? What is it?
It's 15.
15, sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I just remembered as exit 19. I haven't gotten used to the new numbers, but or the reason for the new numbers.
Yeah, me because people actually I came to my house and got lost because 19
Doesn't exist.
and 19 is the number of my house. So it was all, uniform.
Confusing. Thank you.
All right, we all set?
Now you got to move, Rivers.
Yeah, no, right? To 15, right? Nah.
All right, so next up we'll go to finance. Got Mr. Bashara. Kurt, I think, is going to pipe in later when we get to the budget, but we have Rich Bashara now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I got a couple of things. One of them's quick and one of them's not. So I'm going to go the quick one first just to give the board an update. Some of the computer work that Dave Connolly, or IT Dave as he's lovingly known, and I have been working on. Windows 10 is sunsetting very soon, and so we're working diligently to get all of our units that are capable of being on Windows 11 brought up to that, and if not, we're making a list of what we're going to need to do to upgrade by the end of the year. So that's one of our projects. We're working with the network vendors on replacing our old Dell Vertex servers with our new servers. We got these back in December, and we've been working on them, getting the software upgraded to the latest versions, and we're just about ready for cutover on those. We're working with our security and antivirus software. We're upgrading. We're going through each of our client machines and making them more secure, and getting additional things needed for the cybersecurity. It's anticipated that going forward, the insurance carriers are going to want even more strict policies, and so we're working on those now, so we're ready for that. And I'm also working with the communication vendors. We need to update all of our Meraki licensing for our security appliances and all the switches citywide. So that's ongoing and probably will be in August when that's completed. So that's just a quick computer update of things that we've been working on there. Somewhere along the line, finance was requested, I think by President Short, to come up or explain why we've been late on our audits over the last 4 or 5 years. And so I guess that falls on me. So I've kind of written up some things, and I apologize up front. It's a little bit wordy, but in order to understand why and what is going on, you kind of need a little bit of the backstory. So the problem is the way I've defined it is the Ansonia Board of Ed, like many small boards of ed, does not have a fully functional double entry general ledger system. Over the last 10 years, as the Ansonia Finance Department was allowed to share information from the Board of Ed, It was apparent that the system was used primarily as a check writer. It processed payments for their various budgets, but revenues were rarely entered or tracked, and as such, much of the analysis and checks and balances were done off book. It makes reconciliation between the city with the city ledger difficult at best. And note that the Board of Ed operating budget is the education line item in the city budget, but the board has separate funds for both their operating budget, their grants budget, student activities, food services, and school readiness. So they're running multi-funds across a number of things there. All these funds interact with the Board of Ed operating account for such things as payroll and benefits, and money needs to pass between these funds and tracked both in and out of each fund. This can become extremely confusing and forces many transactions to be manually performed and relies heavily on staff interaction. This situation produced negative cash balances and a non-existent balance sheet. Balance sheet is how you are able to move information from one year to another, and accruals for purchases, encumbrances, and payroll easily transfer when you have a ledger system in balance from year to year. Receivables and money due to and from other funds is easily tracked and makes the movement between fiscal years manageable. A double entry ledger system will help to protect your assets, provide better accountability, and more transparency to the transactions that occur. There are many reasons to desire this type of system. And again, I want to stress, no problems have been found at the Board of Ed, and this is not an uncommon methodology, especially in smaller school districts. But you all know I'm an accountant. So the solution, this was easy for me. It was to install a double entry general ledger system at the Board of Ed, similar to the system used at City Hall. Integrate as much of the process with City Hall Finance and Board of Ed Finance as possible, and streamline the flow of information between both. This would be easier said than done, but it is what is needed in my opinion, because it would be good for the Board of Ed, it would be good for the city, and it would provide protection for the taxpayers long after I'm gone. It was settled. That was my goal. The process. After I was elected to the Board of Ed 6 years ago, I started to discuss how we could initiate a conversion process with the superintendent and with Kim DiStefano of the City Finance Department. The Board of Ed hired Rick Belden, a knowledgeable school business manager from Seymour and Shelton, with the intent of having him develop and implement a fully functioning accounting system at the Ansonia Board of Ed, something he was highly capable of doing. Rick was hired in July of 21, and while he worked on the fiscal 22 to start the conversion, I worked on the fiscal 21 audit to provide the Board of Ed information needed to complete the audit. With the departure of one business manager and the hiring of Rick Belden, along with the conversion to the new accounting system, Infinite Visions, the fiscal 21 audit did not get filed until April of 2022. This was mostly due to the changeover to Infinite Visions and was difficult for the city, the Board of Ed, and the auditor. We were hopeful that Rick Belden would be able to implement the changes for fiscal 22, and we would be well on our way to an improved general ledger. Unfortunately, he became ill and had to leave the Board of Ed. Joanne Segan and I jumped in to help close the fiscal 22 books and provide the information for the Board of Ed portion of the audit that year. The audit for fiscal 22 was filed in February of 23. I spent a lot of hours working on that system, learning what their automated entries from the payroll system were doing, what actually was happening, and then developing processes and procedures for the staff to start making balance sheet journal entries and automating as many things as possible. It's worth noting that their payroll system will post entries to 5 different fund ledgers in one entry that contain over 500 lines of entries. Most of the time I was chasing corrections needed from 6 months earlier. Slowly we were making headway. We posted for the open business manager job and only had 3 applicants. Chuck Carey was hired in July of 2023. And again, Joanne Segan and I worked on the fiscal 23 audit, and Chuck learned the system and continued to implement changes to the procedures of posting all the entries to all the funds and tracking the inter-fund entries. Joanne and I made a valiant effort to close fiscal 23 on the Board of Ed ledgers, but there were still too many missing pieces. So again, I had to take all the relevant information from the Board of Ed ledgers and post all the pertinent information into duplicate ledgers on the city IV system so that the auditor would have a full set of ledgers. The verification of the expense side of the ledger would come from the Board of Ed, and the balance sheet entries would be rolled and made on the city side ledgers. We were very close to cutover on fiscal 23, but we ran out of time and the audit was filed in June of 2024. Fiscal 24 would be better. We had our business manager working all year, and most of the changes were hopefully incorporated into the ledger process. Well, this time our business manager left for another job in October of 2024. Once again, I have immersed myself into the Board of Ed books, vowing to complete this crossover and have the ledgers at the Board of Ed be self-sufficient to provide the information for the auditor and only needing reconciliation with the city ledgers. Kim and I have been working side by side, reconciling all the transactions at the Board of Ed and between the city and the Board of Ed. We have just finished providing the auditor with what we believe are a full set of ledgers from the Board of Ed with the full double entry reconciliations and balance sheets. We await the post-closing entries from the auditor, and we will then post them to the various funds and roll the balance sheets forward on both the city and the Board of Ed ledgers. This will be the first time rolling the balance sheet at the Board of Ed, and although we have a few corrections to implement for fiscal 25, we have those ready to go. So fiscal year 24 should be filed this month. On the Board of Ed side, we solicited for a new business manager and found no suitable candidates. Dr. DeBacco and I, thinking outside the box, decided to hire someone that knows finance, and we will train them to do school business. We brought on Eric Marriott, and he is learning quickly. Kim and I will work with him and set him and the Board of Ed staff up with the various balance sheet analysis items we do monthly on our side and work to stay in balance with each other. The food service was always done on QuickBooks, and we have converted that to Infinite Visions this year so that everything is using one system. I apologize for the length. To summarize, several reasons that we've been late over the years. One of them, COVID. At one point in the beginning, we were instituting a new ledger. We were learning to do this remotely, and it took extra time to get there. The personnel turnover at the Board of Ed is a significant item. We've now had 4 different people in about 4 different years. The need to develop processes, implement them, and teach them at the Board of Ed how to use them has taken a lot of time. The new ledger to learn. It's a conversion that started the process, and it was a little bit time consuming to make that conversion. We changed a full chart of accounts at the city side. The Board of Ed rolled theirs, but we will work with that. I'm happy to say we reached the goal just this month. It's my hope that the audit will be easier to reconcile, more transparent, and provide greater analysis of capabilities. No hidden things, just time consuming to get it to a point where I, as an accountant, feel it's correct and in good working order. So that's the reason it's been late. I'm trying to get it to a point where it's equal to the city side ledger system.
Thank you. Rich, I forgot to remind you, you only had 3 minutes to speak, but
Well, that's why I didn't talk during public session.
I'm kidding. Thank you for that. Any questions from the alderman on that?
Yeah, I have a couple. So, Rich, when we went back, when we consolidated the financial system, one of the main selling points was, this was going to be a system both the city and the Board of Ed could use. We bought extra licenses, we bought extra space, whatever it was to make this happen. The city implemented it. I know Kim, you, Kurt came in, I think, towards the end of that for the implementation, because you needed financials. And I guess what's really a bit disturbing to me is that we didn't have a rolling balance sheet for the Board of Ed for almost 3 years.
No, we had it. It was on the city books. But it meant duplication of effort all across the board. That's the issue. Is every time we did anything, we had to keep duplicate sets of records in order for the auditor to be satisfied. So now we'll be able to basically give the auditor Board of Ed books and the city books, and he should be able to perform all of his functions.
Well, it should be all streamlined and consolidated into one application. I don't understand why we have two financial system of records when we made the investment to have a consolidated one.
Well,
So that's
at the time, there was a disconnect between the city and the Board of Ed. And so we ended up with two financial systems and that was known at that time. No different than we ended up with two phone systems because the two boards just really couldn't work together at that time.
no, I get it, because I remember we were talking about the consolidated recharting of the accounts and everything like that, the consolidated chart as they were going to be. There was some of that shared information and stuff like that, but it sounds like that never materialized, which is concerning.
Well, okay, we have what we have, and at some point, maybe we can consolidate in. Again, they're one line on our ledger. They're, 1,000 lines on their side. So there would be a lot of confusion if we tried to incorporate them. They do things, or they look at their fund accounting based on location versus we look at it as departments, and there are some variations that would make it a little bit complicated to do, but my intent is to make both sides as complete and as accurate as possible. And, if I bring them up to being able to do the exact same types of things that we do with balance sheet analysis and knowing every one of the balance sheet items and what's in it and being able to cross-check, we should be able to work together going forward. Easier, better, backup, and we can work towards maybe a consolidation sometime down in the future.
That has to happen, because this, I would say, carrying two systems to this, to not have some of that, the city publishes every line that's out there, right? Now, the Board of Ed doesn't publish it because it's either scattered, it's a mix of this and that. That to me is unacceptable. And I guess just a question to come off of that. What assurance does this?
If I can, the expenses and the revenues are shown monthly on the Board of Ed minutes. It's part of our package. It's posted out in the minutes and the agendas, and all of that is done. The balance sheet is the part where there was a disconnect, and we're going to have that too. But those have always been available and have been posted monthly. So it's not that they're not tracking. No different than we do. We don't post our balance sheet necessarily on a monthly ongoing basis, but we do expenses and revenues. And the Board of Ed does those also for both. They're two primary, actually three. They do the operating budget on the Board of Ed. They do the grants, Fund 20, and they do Fund 55, which is their food service.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three primary. Student activities and school readiness are much smaller, and they're isolated funds.
How often is the city balance sheet updated?
Ours, we update it on an ongoing basis. I mean, so monthly, we do our reconciliations and do our postings.
So is there,
cash is posted daily. I mean, we do all of it. We don't necessarily post it out for anyone to see it, but we track it in finance.
So is there no balance sheet reconciliation performed for the Board of Ed monthly?
It's gotten better over the last 4 years because I've been implementing it. And so, yeah, Sunday night, I recreated the one for fiscal 25, and I will be working with the new person, Eric Marriott, showing him what to do with it, how to do it, each account, and so that we can reconcile. And, this year we reconciled to the Board of Ed our $38 million line item, one line item. We reconciled to the Board of Ed within $1,000. And so that was, and I've isolated parts of that. That was adjustments that they received as credits from vendors, and they took a credit. So they're small items, but we're reconciling almost to the penny within both sides of our number to their number. And it's getting better, and should be perfect when I'm done with this thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and it needs to be ongoing, right? That's got to be a
Oh,
process,
look.
because reconciliations are a key control for any organization, municipality, small business. That's pretty much your cash, your receivables, your payables, everything. And to not
Yes,
have a
well,
reconciliation or a position
if-
on that monthly is
Look, I
concerning.
mean, I'm not faulting Board of Ed. They didn't have they had school business managers that knew special education, they knew bus contracts, but they were not necessarily financial people or accounting type people. So when I tell you they had two sets of things, when they have rolling grants from 2-year grants within their grant process, in order to pay bills from the first year grant, they would leave two ledgers open all the time and pay out of two ledgers that we had to go into and get all the information from to do the audit, instead of rolling that information from last year to this year and being able to pay out at once. So a lot of things have changed. They're now encumbering purchase orders like we do. They just needed to be taught, and I've spent countless hours there, unpaid, just so everybody understands. This is all my time as member of the Board of Ed that I've been over there helping them, teach them, helping them learn, and we're making a better system out of it when we're all done and said. It's taken time, and so I've been late with some of the audits. So
They have $30+ million of taxpayer money every year. They need to be accountable, and that needs to be better, Rich. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to go on the record and say that, because hearing some of this stuff is a bit concerning. It's a bit scary. And, just a final question. What assurance does this board have that the numbers were put in front of us for a budget for this year? How can we rely on them?
you have my word. Look, when I got to the city of Ansonia 35 years ago, the city didn't have a ledger. I spent 5 years creating that ledger from the audits. I've done general ledger creation in my past job. This is what I do. It's part of my fabric. Things need to be in balance. When things are in balance, all things are right. I'm not going to put out things that are bad or false or incorrect. And so this is, if you will, it's been my baby for 35 years. And finance has been, in my opinion, we're not perfect, but we know what we're doing, and we've followed through, and we make sure we get the correct answer. And so all I can tell you is that you have my assurance that the numbers we're working with are the best possible numbers that we have at this point. And the auditor looks at the same thing. They question us. They do their testing. There's not something wrong here. It just could be done better. And that's what my goal was here, to make it better.
All right. Thank you for your info.
Okay.
Joe Cassetti had a question.
Yes, please. Hey, Rich, good job.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm glad you're on the job doing it. Be remiss not to mention Mr. Marriott, wishing him good luck. He's gonna need it.
Yeah, well, if he leaves, I'm done. I quit.
All right, but what I'm really interested in, would the Board of Education meet the city charter requirement for an on-time submission of the budget? Because the city gets their feet put to the fire every year. We hear it from people. We didn't have the budget prepared in time. It's not us.
Okay, I hear you. The ability to have this happen. Look, I don't normally blow my own horn here, but the only reason that I was able to do this is because I have access to the city. I have access to the Board of Ed. I know the system. I know what I wanted, and I was able to implement it. And So there's not a lot of people, not that it couldn't have been done, but there's not a lot of people that could have come in here and done what I just did. Okay?
Noted.
I did it because I want it to be better. I want everything to be better for the city. That's what I do. I'm quiet. I sit in the corner. I don't tell people what I'm doing. I just work on things that I know need to be done. That's me. Okay? A lot of help around me. The finance department is very good. We have open communication. I get calls. Hey, what do I do with this from the Board of Ed, the staff over there? That never used to occur. We've created an open dialogue. We're helping them do things. They help us work on things. This is what we want. We wanted this for many, many years. I've been doing this for 35 years, and Board of Ed and the Board of Aldermen have been fighting for most of that time. And I vowed I will not, as Board of Ed president, will not argue with this board. I'm here to work together with you. I know what you do for the students and the taxpayers of this town. So look, this is what needs to be done, in my opinion, to create this situation where there's open dialogue between the two sides of the river.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate that. I did ask for that, so I got it. Thanks for answering the bell. Kurt, we'll come back to you later. Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to in the public official session to Chief Wayne Williams. Hopefully still here. Yep.
I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm gonna make this as brief as possible because I'm looking at the agenda and I think we're in like the first 10th of the agenda right now. So just a quick personnel update. 2 of the officers graduated from the police academy and are in their field training. 3 officers are still in the academy, but 2 of those are supposed to graduate on June 26th. So we're getting closer to them coming out. We do have 6 open police officer positions that don't include those ones I just advised you of. One of those is a sergeant's position. We're not making a promotion at this time because of the shortages. We also have a dispatcher opening. We're working on backgrounds on that. We are taking applications on a rolling basis now. We don't have a cutoff, so if you know anybody who is interested in law enforcement, please have them reach out. We are still working on our accreditation with the state on tier 2 right now. We are also working on the replacement of our canine unit. Officer Fowler was selected as the next canine handler. We received the vehicle, but we're working on the dog selection. You may have seen over the last couple of days, we had put out a bunch of press releases. We served an arrest warrant on one of the juveniles that was involved in the street takeover on Wakely Avenue. This was the driver of the vehicle that was doing donuts in the middle of the intersection at the time of that takeover. We expect several other arrests in connection with this case. Additionally, other investigations have led to criminal arrests in the past weeks, including the incident at Mead School where a child was injured, an embezzlement case on an elderly female, a violent domestic violence offender. We worked with the state and our federal partners to locate him. Details of those can be found on Facebook page, or I can answer any questions that you have as long as it's not too detailed. Memorial Day parade went off without a hitch. So thank you for everybody participating in that. This past week, several officers participated in the Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run. I want to thank them for their participation, also for all the citizens that came out to cheer the officers and the Special Olympians on. We're working on upstaffing for the upcoming 4th of July holiday. And we're also monitoring some of the changes that are going to directly impact law enforcement agencies as it relates to new legislation that has come out. Some of those laws have been passed by the Senate and the House, but the governor has not signed them yet, so we're waiting for those. They relate to street takeovers, seizures, vehicle seizures, motor vehicle stops, another set of changes to the CMERS pension plan, which is what police officers in our agency are in. And once those laws have been signed, we'll go over them and see what the impact is, and I'll report back if that's necessary. And next month, I will give you our annual report. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Joe Cassetti.
Hi, Chief.
Alderman Cassetti, how are you today, sir?
Very well, thank you. I had one question. I believe we had a referendum where cameras were part of an implementation that we were going to be watching certain streets at certain times. And just curious, do we have in that the ability to have drone surveillance? Does anybody close by in other police departments or other investigation?
I will tell you, as far as the camera project, that is something that we're still working on with the city. As far as drones go, police departments are starting to incorporate that into their plans, especially emergency operation plans.
Yeah.
We have incorporated that into our emergency operation plans.
Beautiful.
So we have several pilots here at the police department, and we also can rely on some of our neighbors that have other agencies that have drones, and we use those in emergency operations.
All right. Thank you for the question, answering the question.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other questions from the Alderman for the chief? All right. Thank you. Thank you for waiting and appreciate it.
No problem.
And our last guest is Dr. Tabacco, and he contacted me and is not able to come tonight. And as a professor, I told him I would give him an excused absence. He's dismissed with honor, or whatever you want to say.
That's the blessing.
So ends the public official session. In my excitement to get to the public official session, I blew right past the minutes. So I just want to go back to that. We do have 3 sets of minutes. I'll just consolidate them all together for consideration. June 2nd, 2025, special meeting. The corrected minutes that were submitted recently from the March 11th meeting, and the summary minutes from the May 13th full board meeting. Can I get a motion to accept all those?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks for letting me jump back. So we'll move on to financial reports. We have 4 items in there. First up is Finance Committee.
Motion to pay all bills if deemed correct, Josh.
Second.
Motion to pay all bills if deemed correct by Mamone, second by Yauman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Second is the municipal report, including the boat recommendations for this month.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion to accept by Mamone, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Third is the request for refunds in the amount of, I want to say it was 1,000. Hang on one second. Amount of $1,144.83 if found to be correct.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Rivers, second by Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And then the last one, and actually we'll come back to it in the communications as well. It was the letter from Johanna Figueroa, the tax collector. This was the suspense report that was submitted in the packet. The suspense list from the tax collector in the amount of $523,331.33.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention, Cassetti. And then she also submitted the write-off one, but that'll take that up under, I think it's under communications, because that came in late. So we'll move on. Thank you guys. We did vote on that, right? I forget. Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Monthly reports. Again, thanks to all those departments that submitted reports. We're getting a nice groove now. I think we got the most this month of any month from the leadership of the departments. So
Make a sweeping motion to accept all of the staff reports and thank them for their efforts.
all right.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So thank you again to all those who submitted reports. We have nothing this month under accents and claims. Appointments, there's one under the Connecticut Regional Water District. Nomination by the mayor to reappoint Thomas P. Clifford, the third Democrat of 10 South Westwood Road, for a term to expire June 30th, 2028.
I make a motion.
I second.
I second it.
Motion by Janetti and second by Yauman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right, motion carries. Next we have a couple communications. First communication is from Alderman Mamone. This was was mentioned, I think, in public session about the transfer station fees. Tony, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yes. So I asked Tim Holman to join too, just to kind of talk through this. I know we've said, and Tim has come out and said, we don't do out of towners, which I think Mr. Phipps had also said, but I've noticed and, even queried with a few other folks who have gone to the transfer station, there's been no validation that they are from Ansonia, Derby, anywhere else. So I am not quite sure how we are ensuring that out of towners are not using our transfer station. So Tim, I don't know if you could maybe address that first.
The guy that I have in there, Jeff Billings, is very familiar with most of the people that come through there. But we have a system that if we don't know you, you will stop, you will give your ID, you will come out, we will check, see what you have, and we will go accordingly. I can't say that there aren't times that some people will sneak through the system, because according to our chart, if you're an Ansonian resident, you have the right to dump there. So if the person in that truck has an Ansonia license and that passenger's from somewhere else, they could be coming from out of town. But our system and our check and balance right now, I have confidence in that, and I don't think there's too many outsiders that are coming into our transfer station. Now, you submitted a report of a fee structure, and I examined the fee structure, and it's the fee structure that you submitted I think you and I and the board need to sit down, maybe John Marini, and we come up with a different kind of fee structure, because a lot of that stuff we don't charge for. I set up a program a while ago. We used to pay $13, $14 a refrigerator,
right,
a air condition to get the Freon taken away.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to do that anymore. They come in, they take it, it's free, they remove it. Doesn't cost the residents anything to dump it, because it doesn't cost us anything to get rid of it. The mattress program, most towns charge for mattress, we don't. I'll tell you why. We have a state-funded program where we recycle mattresses. They go into a container and it's picked up by a company and delivered. If we start charging, we are not going to be part of that state program, and that will no longer be accessible to us. Trying to get rid of mattresses is very hard. If you are not participating in the state program where they come and take them, and you're on your own, most companies will not take the mattresses. It's going to cost us a lot. So we've saved a lot of money in that aspect. The electronics, that's free to us. They come, it's a state program, they come and take them away. So basically, what you need to charge for is U-Hauls, trailers that are coming in with brush, residents are coming in with 80 bags of leaves. What you don't realize is we don't have the capability of disposing of the leaves like we used to, because the WPCA was sold. So now we have to dispose of those leaves, and it's a cost to us that was not in our budget before. So I propose that we charge for anybody that's bringing leaves down, but we have to figure out how we're going to do that, whether it's a truckload, container, We got to figure that out. Brush, we spend 10,000 twice a year to have our brush removed. They come in, a company comes in, they grind it up. This stuff is not calculated in our expenses and in our budget. So these are other things that we have to consider. Also, I would like to see where the transfer station, the money that is generated goes back into the transfer station itself, into Public Works. Right now, it goes into the general fund. There's no accounting. We generate a little bit more money than you think we generate. We have the metal containers that could generate anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month, or even more. It depends on how much metal is dumped. We also generate from demolition. Demolition material consists of contractors that come in that is doing work, and we charge by the tonnage on that. Right now, it's 105. I saw a proposal where it was going to be 120. At one point, it was 120, and the city put it back to 105. But I would like to see that money put back into Public Works in a certain line item where if we needed it to get tools or equipment, we can access that line item without going to boat every so often to try to get more money to supplement what we don't have. So these are things that we need to sit down and talk about as a group, or in a session where we can figure out what needs to be done. Now, I sent you some pictures. The scale in the transfer station, if we're talking about long-term, we have to fix that scale.
Yeah.
That scale is deteriorating. It probably is not going to last more than a couple of months. You probably will have to shut down the transfer station eventually until that scale is done. We put plates over it to try to put a Band-Aid on it. When we removed those plates and actually looked at it, it's getting worse. It's deteriorating to the point that it may, in a month or two, be shut down. So that's something that the aldermen have to think about when it comes to the budget of trying to replace that scale, or deciding what you're going to do with the transfer station itself. So when we talk about generating money or charging residents for certain things, we have to fix other things first, and then we can go from there.
Which is kind of why, again, I know from a revenue generation standpoint, you know, starting with the out-of-towners, like I said, I've talked to an assortment of people, you know, a lot of us just get waved through. And again, I don't know if he knows folks, or it's just kind of like, go ahead, or they assume everybody's from Ansonia or whatever, but everybody that I've talked to, nobody's been identified. There's been none of that. And I was kind of thinking too, if you have to show a valid identification as well as a registration, right? You could jump in your buddy's car from Beacon Falls with a truckload of stuff from his house, come down to Ansonia, flash an Ansonia license, and dump all your crap here, which again is not the purpose of what we're trying to do here. So if you had to brandish a valid registration or a current registration as well, kind of serves the purpose that only our residents are able to do this. And, you know, this potential free ride for some of these out-of-towners needs to come to an end.
Well, I mean, yeah, that may help, but you know what? There's a lot of people that knows a lot of people in Derby and Seymour. Like, take for instance, I have a truck, right? I could go to a friend's house, you know, in Derby, load my truck up, and I could come back here.
Sure you could. Sure you could.
So it's a whole lot of things around that. But the main thing is to get the scale fixed. I mean, we were talking about this for years, having a fee. Each time, well, it got implemented and then it was pulled back. The scale is bad. I mean, how are they going to charge for what they have if you don't even have a scale, you know, to weigh it? I mean,
No, I understand that concept, which is why, you know, when Tim had said that, I was thinking, well, maybe it's, you know, if it's an out-of-towner, it's something astronomical to either cover the cost of dumping or go back to your town and dump it, at your own transfer station.
Right.
Right? Make it something astronomical, such as it's $200 a car or something like that, or $200 a truck. Which again bypasses the scale temporarily for something along those lines for an out of town.
Yeah.
Well, I think what the most important thing right now is the scale, but then you also have to you have people coming in who move or are moving to this city, and they come in U-Hauls. We have no fee structures on that. If you're an Ansonia resident and you got a little mini U-Haul, you come in, you're allowed to dump furniture. Is that fair? Because the city has to pay for the tonnage on that. When a resident comes in with a trailer, he cleans out his garage. There's no fee structure on that. He comes in, he lives in Ansonia, he dumps. It's not demolition. He gets away with that. So there's a lot of stuff that's being dumped there that should be chargeable material. It's inevitable. You have to do it sooner or later. The tonnage is insane. You have to come up with a fee structure. I know the residents will say, "Oh, we don't want to pay this, we don't want to pay that," but you have to do it eventually. I'm not saying you got to come up with something high, but there has to be some kind of fee structure.
Tim, is that something that maybe you could take a crack at? Again, you're probably you and some of your folks, some of your colleagues are probably some of the most familiar folks with what you're seeing. Is that something you'd be willing to take a crack at, to say, hey, it's going to cost you, $10 a couch. It's going to cost you, $5 a love seat or something like that.
I have, when I was in the scale, I came up with those fee structures, but at the time, the city didn't want to incorporate them. I understand that, but we have to do it sooner or later. And I can come up with some structures, and we'll sit down, we talk about it. We're not trying to hurt the residents. We're not trying to charge for every little thing that comes in there, but we do want to recoup some of this stuff and some of the tonnage and some of the weights and some of the money that is paid out. We do want to recoup some of that, but we can come up with a structure that is not going to hurt the residents too bad.
Minimally,
Yes.
even if those funds are used to fix the scale, to maintain the equipment down there, things like that, as you're saying, even if it's kind of something along those lines, right? It's got to be, again, I'm still keying on the out of towners, but I'd be open to hearing discussions on, again, you know the business best in terms of what you're seeing in terms of volume. I go down there, it's busier than some popular restaurants on a Saturday night, on a Saturday morning or something like that.
Yes, it is. It's because there's no structure as far as fees. Now, I have pulled up on residents in U-Hauls. I have questioned them. Where are you coming from? Here comes the ID. I live at this place. I live at that place. And it really upsets me that they can come in and dump an entire half a house and not get charged. That's something that we have to look into. That's tonnage that we have to pay.
Sure.
Yeah, we had a fee structure before that we was going to implement, and being a contractor, if I know that I have to pay $200 per truckload to dump, it's going to be in my price. So contractors are not going to lose money.
Right, of course, it's a cost of business and it's passed along, but I get that. So, maybe we table this until we could have, Tim go through that a little bit more, because I'd be interested in moving forward with this in some capacity. Again, with some of Tim's feedback to implement some sort of price structure on this.
Yeah, I'm going to propose trailers, U-Hauls, stuff of that nature. And we can come up with something to recoup some of the stuff that we're paying out. But I also would like to see eventually, maybe Kurt could work out something where when a contractor comes in and pays demolition, that money is not put into the general fund, that money is put back into Public Works in a line item to get what we need down there. This is something that I thought that should have been done a long time ago, but it's not. So maybe we can think about that also.
You have a sense of any of what it is now, Tim?
As far as fees that's coming in?
Yeah.
No, Richard Pashore probably could answer that a little more than I can, but
okay,
it's a lot more than you think it is.
Yeah, I'm sure we have it somewhere. If it's getting baked into, you know, the general fund, I'm sure it's tracked somewhere. You know, Rich I think has a record of everything on the city side, so I would bet a pretty large sum of money that he's got it somewhere.
It's not a large sum of money, but
No,
it's
I get it.
to put back in to recoup some of the stuff and help us get some of the tools and essential stuff that we need without having to come back to boat every 3 or 4 months.
No, I get it.
It's somewhere between 50 and 60,000 a year.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Kurt.
And that would help.
How
us
much
out
is a
lot.
new scale?
We have 100,000 budgeted for the scale and the surrounding understructure.
Thank
That's
you.
in the new budget, Kurt?
That's part of the referendum. So I'm just waiting for the information to be able to go out and start the process.
Okay. All right.
So a true tonnage figure we could actually bring, you know, once we get the scale in, calibrated, all this other stuff. So that is something we could obviously potentially move forward, you know, with as well. Again, everybody then, you know, would be, you know, identified and kind of work it from there, especially if there's a charge. Okay. All right, Josh, I don't know if you need me to withdraw this or we could just kind of leave it and take no action, but we'll sounds like we'll circle back with Tim.
Leave it, take no action, and then, Tim, if you want to sketch out some parameters, and then maybe we have a committee or, you know, run it
No,
by.
absolutely. I'll come up with a fee structure. I'm very familiar with this. I can itemize it out to the T.
Yeah, I know because me and Tim has talked about this for years.
Yeah, it's something that I wanted to implement a long time ago, but
Yeah.
I do want to remind, this is only a courtesy for the Board of Aldermen, but all Board of Aldermen know that they can always dump tires at 2 Gracie Lane.
Right. Yeah.
Free of charge.
Yeah.
Any condition. Always welcome to Gracie Lane. That's where all
and also while we on the subject of tires, we have to look into that too. Tires are very expensive, and the current fee structure that we have is
not enough.
Way out of line.
Yeah.
We're charging $6 for a tire that we're paying $20 to get rid of. Doesn't make any sense. And our hands are tied with that. So we need to sit down with the tires and figure this out. Also, somebody over the years, this last year and the year before, have been dumping tires throughout Ansonia. Hundreds and hundreds of tires at different locations. I'm quite sure men know about that.
Pretty sure Joe knows all about it, but
Joe.
Oh,
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, Tim, if we can kind of get something to materialize maybe for next month for the board to kind of talk about addressing, obviously the tires, you know, we don't want to undo anything with, you know, the mattresses or any of the electronics or refrigerators or air conditioners, any of that stuff. We're not going to, you know, compromise that. But some of this other stuff where we're blatantly or knowingly taking a beating, such as tires, you know, that needs to be addressed. And I think we should address that, you know, for the next meeting here in front of the board.
Absolutely.
To get something implemented.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be at the next board meeting and I'll come up with the fee structure. I'll submit it to you before the next board and we can talk about it then.
All right. Any questions, reach out, Tim. I'd be happy to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Tim, while you're here, any comments on the street sweeper status
Listen,
of it?
my street sweeper is on here, Mike Marino. Mike Marino is actually an operator along with Jay Bird. They're operators. I only have 2. They do more than street sweeping. We're shorthanded. We're actually in the month of June. We're union-wise. They have to take their vacations. So we're very shorthanded. We have some people out on comp, but he has been out sweeping. I'll pull him to do catch basins. I'll pull him to pave. I'll pull him to do potholes, curbs. So he's a man. The 2 of them do a lot of things. I don't have the capability of having someone sweep the streets every single day. I don't have that capability. We have schedules where he may go out once or twice a week. And by the time you get to one section of town and you do that section and you go to the next, by the time he gets back to the other section, someone's complaining, oh, you haven't been over here. So it's an ongoing battle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Do you need a motion to table this until the next meeting?
I don't think so, because there was nothing formally proposed. I mean, there was the letter. I think we can just not take any action.
Okay.
Next.
The number 2 communication we have from the tax collector, Johanna. And this is the other report that was submitted, the write-off report. And you guys have been told every year, every June, she submits those 2 reports. These are those incredibly problematic accounts, some older than 15 years. So she was requesting to approve the write-off total of $48,520 58 cents.
Motion to accept the write-off amount.
Second.
Motion to accept, Mamone, second by Rivers, all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
1 opposed, Cassetti. Motion carries. All right, let's see. We have what page am I on here? We have no resignations. We do have 1 resolution. So we can just accept it. And if there's anyone who doesn't want to, it states right in there that's going to be distributed.
Motion to accept the resolution.
Motion by Cassetti. Second, who was the seconder on that?
Me, Malone.
Malone. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Next is ordinance. We have nothing. And then we have a few items under new business. First item, these were all in your packet. First item, solar power purchase agreement, new business number 1. John, do you want to speak to that? Or
I think Kurt's on to speak to that.
okay, Kurt.
Sorry, wasn't ready to start talking yet, but yeah, so we have the solar array at the transfer station. We're entering into an agreement with Aquarian to sell that power directly to them. The cost to the city is 8 cents a kilowatt. That's what we budgeted out the debt service. We will be selling it to them for 10 cents a kilowatt. And that amount has already been placed into the budget as a revenue. So.
Okay, so we'll get a little money back on that. Any questions on that? The full agreement's in your packet.
Can I just say they want to settle this before the July 1st so they can get it off their books because they owe us money, if you would take that into consideration.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I was gonna actually ask about that, and I seen it on the agenda. So if you need a motion, I will motion.
All right. Motion to
second.
accept. Motion to accept by Rivers and second.
Could we discuss it for a second?
Yeah. Motion by Rivers, second by Tar, and then further discussion. Alderman.
Yeah, is there a separate meter for the Aquarian people? Is there going to be a meter there? And who's responsible for paying for that meter and putting it in? So we know how much electricity they're using. Because if we're paying 8 cents and selling it for 10 cents and have to pay for the equipment, then we're doing Aquarian a gigantic favor. Maybe our rate needs to go up. Do you know how that's going to work?
Oh yeah, there's a software package that we have access to, as does Aquarian. So we'll be able to track the electricity usage. So we'll know exactly what that is. And that's already there. So there's no additional cost for that at all, Bobby.
question, Bob. Any other questions?
I just have one, Kurt, this is probably best for you, in terms of how is it paid? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it annually? Like, how are we recouping that?
I believe they're gonna run the reports monthly and pay us monthly.
Okay.
Is the way it's gonna be, but it'll be a kind of a true up situation. So, you know, we would expect payment in February for what happened in January, that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
There's a
also gonna
delay.
go back and pay us as of the day they took ownership of the WPCA. So we will receive a lump sum payment, as Sheila mentioned, to bring us current right up through June 1st.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So.
Oh, and one thing just to add, we'll continue to control the ZRECs. So those ZREC payments will come in and still go to us. So those average, 50-ish thousand a year.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thanks for your work on that. Number 2 under new business, agreement among City of Derby, WPCA, City of Ansonia, WPCA, and Aquarian Water Company of Connecticut. Who's talking about this?
I can just follow up with what I have been involved with, which is to say there are between 50 and 60 customers that reside in Derby. And this agreement simply says Aquarian will be billing those Derby customers for their sewer rates instead of, as it currently says, City of Ansonia will be billing Derby for sewer. So those accounts are, they are the property of Aquarian, but it doesn't, in the agreement, it says Ansonia will bill them. And doesn't make sense.
Are those people like on the line? Are they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
So who's Aquarian's going to bill them directly?
Yes.
Are they part of the rate stabilization fund?
No, Derby residents are not.
Okay.
It's only for Ansonia residents.
And
So
it's just
prior,
main-
we were just billing those 60 customers.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The WPCA was billing Derby because they owed Ansonia
This is
most of
just
the money.
transferring the right to collect to Aquarian because otherwise they wouldn't have a right.
Right. Perfect.
And you are technically the Water Pollution Control Authority.
Right.
Board of Aldermen, so only you can make that, only you could designate that power.
Perfect.
All right. So
motion to accept.
Motion to accept the agreement.
Second.
Second.
Mamone was the first one to make the motion, so we'll go Cassetti second.
I'll second.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks.
Ugh.
New business number 3, vehicle immobilization program. This came from Bobby. You want to speak to this?
Yeah, there's so many cars and we have this discussion constantly that have not paid their taxes in extended periods of time. And the city is in a position where we need to start collecting those back taxes. So one of the ways we have the ability is to boot those cars that owe back taxes and they can pay for their taxes and have the boot removed. And at some point, we've had this prior, so it shouldn't be hard to reinitiate, I guess. We have the list, we can get the list from the tax collectors. And we should start booting these cars. I gave you I did some research in some other towns, so I gave you some of the language.
Bobby, who would do the booting here? Would we need a vendor to do that?
So I'm not sure who did it prior. That's why I figured, John, you could
Yeah.
probably answer that
The
when we
city
did have
already-
the program.
Yep, the city already does work with vendors, and under those agreements, we do have the ability to do booting. It's just been a preference right now of the office, tax collection office, not to do booting. Obviously, it's felt that this board is best to decide on a step like that. So if this board would like to go in that direction, that would be communicated to the tax office and they would work with their existing vendors to implement that collection methodology.
John, why is there an unwillingness to do this in the tax office?
Well, I just think it's a matter of the steps taken towards residents, they try, and if you take a look at the collection rate, obviously, it has been steadily improving. Tax office puts a lot of work into generating collections, to bumping that number up. This is obviously one more step. It's obviously a more intrusive step, but at the same time, particularly for long delinquent accounts, not unwarranted. And as Alderman Tarr puts out there, it's following in the footsteps of many communities that unfortunately in this day and age have to get very serious, because while we may think about it as a dramatic step right towards collection, it's also a dramatic failure to everyone that's paying their taxes on time to not do something about the long-term delinquents.
I wanted to ask, if we had this program before, who stopped it? I mean, who gave the tax office the authorization to stop that program?
I don't necessarily know that actual booting was ever in place. I think the ability was in place, but to my knowledge, I don't believe that vehicles were being booted under our administration.
John, do you need the language for?
I think it would
Sorry, Dan.
simply be a vote to authorize or to give that directive to move to the city and to staff to move forward with a booting component in any collections efforts.
Yeah, I don't want folks to say, well, if they're kind of against it, well, we'll just boot people who were 10 years delinquent, which again will never result in a kind of an action, right? I know if you're an assortment of months late, I think they've adopted some sort of lien policy, notification that was happening.
It's standard that if you're late, a lien goes, it has to secure the city's interest, right?
Of course,
That's nothing uncommon.
I think it,
But this, I mean, if you want to set parameters such as a delinquency more than X amount of dollars or X amount of time, that's what we did with things like the lien sale.
so there needs to be steps like there is in several of the other towns. I mean, obviously people do get a delinquent notice and people are given time to pay the arrearages. But as a year goes past and they've not paid the prior year and then they don't pay the current year, it gets to a point where do we draw that line? So if somebody's more than a year and then the next tax year rolls around and they're still not paying, they've gotten those warning letters, they've had the ability over a year. I think 365 days is a lot of time to not pay and continue not to pay. We could set those parameters. We could make sure that those initial letters go out, just like we do with blight. We make sure that there's letters that go out. Gives people time to
Tax
make
office is
payment.
very diligent in terms of getting notice out. So there is no taxpayer that's not getting notice that their taxes are due. They're very diligent with that already.
Right.
I think it's a question of where you want to draw the line in terms of when the booting comes into effect.
I think Bobby, if you went 2 years, Bobby, right, then you're kind of looking at, well, hey, you can't get potentially your registration renewed, right? If you're delinquent at that point, and if they're driving around unregistered, I think we should maybe look at, two cycles. Is it crazy? Yes, but if you use 365 as an example, if you have folks that maybe say use a tax refund to pay their taxes because they're living paycheck to paycheck or something like that, that's a one-time event that you're looking at. And if it just happens to fall, in the February, March timeframe, you kind of have something like that to kind of work with. I think 365 is aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking
more
they're
2
missing
years.
their January and they're missing their July, right?
Potentially, if they have a 2-cycle payment, if they have an older vehicle, then it could be consolidated to one payment.
Yeah, and some of the registrations are longer than 2 years these days,
Right.
so it's really not being effective at the state level because they're not coming up for renewal for a longer period of time now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, we can have a conversation about that. I know Dan and I had talked about this a while ago because it was getting to the point that there were so many delinquent cars.
Yeah, Dan's got his hand up. So does Cassetti.
Dan, you're first. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had discussed this years ago. We did put this into effect. It didn't seem to work. Because some of the issues we had were the company puts a boot on a car. It cannot stay there indefinitely. I believe the limit is 48 or 72 hours.
40.
If the person leaves the vehicle sitting there, they have to take the boot off. Second, we can't boot cars in somebody's driveway. Now, those might be people that owe even more money, because I knew several people in the city that had large bills and they parked their cars in the driveway and we can't touch them. So it affects people street parking and in the lower wards more than anyone else. So we should tie it to a dollar amount, because having somebody with a low value car, they can have their car booted for $100 tax bill and then have a $150 boot charge plus the other fees. It's just unfair. We did have people in my ward. There's a lot of street parking in the first ward. It's, to boot their cars over a small amount of money doesn't really help us. It's just, penalizing them. With the registration, they cannot register a car or renew their registration if they have unpaid taxes. We already addressed that with the tax office. They need a proof that they paid it. And unfortunately, a lot of people do kind of use that. They end up paying their taxes on their car. Maybe not every year, every other year, because they have to renew their registration. It's not right, but, that happens. I just don't want to see, people over a small amount have this boot on them. They come out to go to work one morning, there's a boot on their car over $100 fee. And now they have to pay $250, $300 to get it taken off their car. And if they can afford to just let it sit there, we had one person I can say for sure I know, he had 2 vehicles booted in front of his house on North Cliff Street. They sat there. They had to take the boot off. He still didn't pay. So, we do have to look at this overall and come up with a better system, because I think it should be based on the amount, set a limit. It would enact collection or, being able to boot somebody. That's all I think. So, thank you.
Can we say the boot fee, it's
Joe Cassetti?
Yes, Bobby, you said you spoke to the assessor's office about this?
No, I didn't.
What'd you say?
Spoke to Dan about it.
No, Dan and I had this conversation a couple of years ago about.
Dan or Dana? What did you say?
No, I said Dan.
All right, I'm sorry. I understood. John, does the assessor's office have anything to do with
No,
Booting is a tax.
No.
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 Tax office.
Tax.
All right, so if they get a
Tax
list
office.
if they get a list of people that are delinquent,
We have the list. We have the list.
If you want to set it as something, Dan made 2 good points. Number one,
Yeah.
if you're just going off of how long you're delinquent, and you also take into account the disproportionate impact on the street parking lower wards, you're going to get a lot of people being booted for small amounts, where larger amounts being owed in the upper wards are going completely unenforced.
right?
So setting it based on value makes more sense,
Yeah.
right? So the
Yeah.
question is, I think if we go from, what is the average? Well, it really depends on the car, of course, right? How
I
old
mean,
the
right
car-
now, though, if you
tax
look at the
per year.
if you look at the overall amount, it's over $500,000. Right, Tony Levinsky?
Yep.
Yeah.
We
That's
pulled the
right.
list. It's about $500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still 600,000.
Closer to $600,000 in back taxes that haven't been collected by the city.
Yeah, but what's the average tax bill that's out there?
Understood, but some of them are year over year over year. So the initial bill on one could be maybe 100, but they haven't
Accumulate.
paid it for 3 or 4 years.
Chicago's
So now
saying,
you're
like,
up to
what's your
400 and
average?
500.
Yeah, Chicago's saying, like, what's your average tax bill? But that could range, like, on a new car from between
Oh, yeah.
100
I
to
mean, that goes by your
$1,000 a
taxes.
year, depending what that car is. For a very old car, they could be far, far, far lower. So
Can't we back into this by I don't know.
paid for 2 years,
Putting a-
and all of a sudden be $1,000 or maybe even more than that if it's a brand new car.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe a breakdown of what's actually owed, like could give us actually the average bill, and maybe help us make the decision. or you could try and pick a number that just is high, like $600, right? Let us know. We could do a little more research and bring that data back, because we could take Johanna's list and break out, what the
Right.
actual bills look like. What does that list consist of? Of that,
Can we put liens on these people's?
liens are the way that we collect taxes.
I thought, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was another mechanism through the DMV as well, that not only for registration, but also for reissuance of licenses that's connected.
There is a
Isn't there-
way there's a way that where you go to DMV, there's a cross check, so they realize you haven't paid if you're registered, right? In Ansonia, they realize you haven't paid.
Right, so they can't also actually get a reissuance of their license, I think, until their taxes associated with the car are paid.
That
as
happens
well.
automatically, Joe.
Yeah, that
Right,
happens.
right. As long as that's what I thought. So it's both registration and license. So okay.
It's pretty punitive for us to get involved with this.
We need to.
Remember,
Because the tax office won't.
Well,
we
yeah,
need to
we
pay the
need to.
taxes.
I don't think we
It
need
hurts
to.
other people.
I would just say that cities and towns are making hundreds of thousands of dollars by using the boot program, and we can
Right.
bring that data to you guys. But yeah, it's punitive, but the people who register and pay their taxes, it's
Exactly.
not really fair to them either. So
We're going to talk fairness now. No, like we gave Tim, give Tim free leash to go ahead and figure out how to run his weigh station. We know that ultimately the expense of replacing that scale is up to the city. So for him, excuse me, for him to get involved with dealing with us, telling him what to do, I think we're way out of. I mean, we're going to find tires and sofas all over the city because we're going to try and nitpick this system that Tim has down and knows what he's doing. And for us to turn around and try and put a dollar amount on things, I think it's just going to be punitive and it's going to hurt us in the long run.
But I just say that, okay, talking strictly from a resident's point of view, why should this other person not pay his tax every year? And every year I got 5 or 6 cars at my house and they get paid.
Yep.
So
That's right.
But
why
Joe,
pay for them
I'm sorry.
years and without paying taxes and still get the benefit? That's not right either to a lot of residents.
A lot of people can't afford it. They're getting
But
beat
Joe,
over
to
the
your
head.
point, how do we replace equipment if we're not willing to do something to cover part of those costs? Or how do we run our town if we're just going to let everything, just go because people can't afford it? At some point in time, we have to run a city. We're going into a year of a zero increase.
right.
How do we give people services? How do we run those street sweepers? If we're not collecting monies in different avenues, how do we continue to run the city when we're not making any incremental, monetary investments?
And
I would say
How do we
maybe
get those things fixed? How
if
do we
there's a
keep our city going?
there's a difficulty selecting what the appropriate amount would be, the threshold. If you could refer it back to staff until the next meeting, I could
Yeah.
work with the tax office. We could do basically a biopsy of that delinquency and figure out what those bills actually consist of. And we could show you information showing, where that actually falls. Is it a lot of little bills, or is it basically concentrating in, a smaller group that just owes a lot? And I think maybe the diagnosis, right, will be based on what that actually shows. Because right now we know the aggregate that's over, but we don't really know what's making it up. Again, is it a lot of people with 100 here, 100 there, or do you have just like a small handful of people with large unpaid bills? And maybe we could tailor the strategy to that data.
I like that.
Yeah, let's do that.
We have the list. We have the list. So,
but if we crunch those numbers, it's hard to take a quick look at it and to understand, unless it's in a form that we can do that with. Like, is that a lot of little delinquencies? Is it a smaller number of larger delinquencies? What's the average delinquency? That may help you determine a threshold.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. What's the average?
And we can crunch that, and we can crunch that very quickly.
What is, so can I ask you guys a question? So if you go to a store, or if you have a credit card, or you have a bank account, if you overdraw your account, regardless of your financial situation, your overdraft fee is the same generally, depending on the type of account. Your interest rate, even if you're somebody with less credit because of the money you make, you're more prone to a higher interest rate, right? So you're going to have that rate, or that that higher rate kind of environment attached to you, because you do have less than maybe a 650 credit score or something like that.
Right.
So I get there's things around that. There's you file your taxes late, you get charged a fixed fee, and then the interest rate is just over 20%. You don't get a break because of your income level, or you've only made so much, or whatever it is. So why are we going to put this elaborate fee structure in when we could just request 3 notifications if you're delinquent more than X amount of days or years? And if it just so happens, if the boot fee is $150 and your delinquent fee is $120, say the boot fee cannot exceed the taxes owed or something like that, and just call the boot fee $120 as well.
I thought we were talking about
boot fee may be
leaning,
determined
too.
by the boot company, though. We may
John?
to control that boot fee.
John, I thought we were talking about leaning also. I
So
mean,
if we have no control
do.
over the
Yeah,
boot
this
fee,
is-
John,
this is
why
an
are we
extra-
doing this?
Well, the boot fee, I think, is going to be determined again by what the vendor charges for booting.
Right.
So
Then
like a
I make-
towing, like
then I-
you call the towing company if they're parking in the space, right? And the towing company sets the price that you pay to get your car back. Not the person
Right,
that
based
bought the tow.
on where they're able to park. So if we have some of these vendors already established, we can't change that boot fee. Obviously, we could change the term if they're, again, more than X periods or X
Exactly.
dollar amount delinquent.
Yeah, the threshold, but you can't change the fee that the company needs to do whatever it's doing to go down and unlock the boot.
Yeah, that's their fee.
Right. So
It's not
again,
coming to us. It's going.
so-
Yeah, that fee's not coming to us. That fee's going to the company for its services of putting the boot on and off.
so if somebody has a nicer car and they don't pay their taxes, they can get booted technically in 1 year. Whereas if I have an 84
Absolutely.
Chevy, it could take 7 years for my car to get booted.
Exactly. If it's based on that monetary threshold, exactly.
I don't agree with that.
That makes no sense.
Right, that don't either, right.
We both commit the exact same offense. The penalty should be the same for both of us.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, I can go with that.
I would
What's
say
the
2
term?
months is fair before taking action.
What?
Chicago, do you like 2 years? You guys like 2 years delinquent?
I do.
And then a monetary or no monetary.
And
fee.
that too, that could be.
Or
No monetary. I don't, just again, it's got to be equal across the board.
Right.
All right.
Bobby, do you mind if I steal your motion?
No, I absolutely not.
I'll make a motion to move forward with this boot program with a 2-year delinquency on it to start the notifications to boot.
Second it.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Tar. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
No. And
Oh, 1 no, King. Sorry. All
I'll change mine to no also.
right, 2 no's, King and Cassetti. Motion still carries. All right, so number 4, new business, reduction of fee Ansonia boating ordinance. Is Dave Conley on? He was before. Is he still
Yes,
here?
I am.
Yep. Dave, you suggested this. Do you want to speak to this?
Oh, okay. Back in 2019, when we came up with the boating ordinance, we paid 90 cents each for the stickers that go on the boat. Each boat requires 2 stickers, and they're good for 2 years. So the fees were set at $2 for residents, $25 for non-residents. Since that time, for a number of reasons, one being we've ordered fewer stickers, and others being material cost increases, stickers are now $3 each. So we're giving residents 2 stickers for $2, and the city's paying $6. And I know it's not a Doge effort, but every penny counts. So we want to bring this back to the ordinance committee and have them revise the amounts for the stickers.
I think we can just make that amendment here and just be as make the motion. I'd make a motion that instead of putting a dollar amount on it, Dave, I think it's just the cost of production for the stickers for residents and maintain the $25 fee for out of towners.
I'll second.
Point of discussion. How many of these do we do? Dave, do you know how many we sell?
I was told yesterday in the clerk's office that they've issued 2 this year, total.
2 for 2 vessels.
We
don't
have
need an act of Congress for that.
we paid $12 and we received 4.
Now, John, would our gondolas in the river require these stickers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Josh, can I just say, the problem was the first order of stickers, they ordered 100 of them, but they put the years on it.
Oh dear God.
Oh no.
So the 2-year period. So they're no good because they're expired. That's why.
Can we order in 10s, Beth?
We just ordered 20.
Oh,
So-
That's good.
But I have to pay a $60 bill and I've taken in $2.
Unless we can get a grant for more vessels.
let's get those rowboats.
Well, if it costs us $3 per ticket, then we should be charging $4 per ticket because that
Costing us 6, Alderman Rivers.
Yeah, we give them 2 stickers.
Yeah.
Can you boot a vessel?
John.
It's an anchor, I think.
Or a needle.
Where are they storing these vessels in Ansonia? I just wanted to know.
Like kayaks and things like that. They're smaller,
Oh,
battery
okay.
powered.
That's what you're talking about, kayaks and stuff?
Kayaks, blow up like rafts and boat, like small little things.
Battery
Small-
powered
Okay.
boats.
I was
Pink
thinking like
flamingo.
boats.
So what do we want to do with this, Joe? Yaman.
I think we keep the motion the same, just as, cost of production to be determined by staff when they go to place the order. I mean, I leave it at that for the residents of stickers. If it's $3 a sticker, we can break even at least, be the goal.
well,
6.
don't we pay for the shipping? I mean, we're getting nothing if we charge them the exact same thing we paying for it.
We sell 2 Chicago.
Okay, so that would be $2 for us then.
Tell them $5. Big deal.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's
All right. Yaman made the motion. Did someone second that?
Yes,
Yeah.
Who was it?
I did.
Oh, second by Tar. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
no.
All right. Motion carries.
I abstain.
1 abstention, Cassetti.
No boat for you.
Got 2 abstentions.
2
Dan's-
abstention.
I think Dan's hand is tired.
No, Dennis just has his hand up.
No,
Right.
me, I'm abstaining.
Oh, another abstention, Rivers.
Well, then you get no boat.
I don't have one.
I don't know, see you out on the water there, Windy City. All right, old business. There's 1 item listed, but we already covered it. It says non-resident transfer station fees.
I'm not talking about it again. That's a dupe.
That was just the resolution part of the correspondence, so you could skip that over.
Yep.
Hey,
We do have the item we added at the beginning of the meeting. The Tony added the soccer request. Do you
yeah.
refer that to you?
Okay, that's that. You want to vote on this, or you want to have a discussion first? I mean,
Is there a motion to? I don't. I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Well, I think we had last time. I think we had a motion and a second, but then we ended up tabling it because we wanted to finalize,
The budget.
I guess, what the budget was and to see if anything else came in. So, and I don't believe any other requests have come in because Kirk didn't send any along. I didn't see any in the packet. So, he's got the request. He sent pictures of the rusted out goals. It's pretty straightforward. I think there was 10,000 in the fund that Kurt had confirmed or Rich had confirmed last meeting, and nothing has been charged against it. So I'll make a motion to accept his request for $4,924, which was the cost after tax noted in his request. Actually, wait, he's requesting 5,000, so I will approve the full 5,000. Request a motion to approve the full 5,000.
Second.
Discussion.
Right, motion by Mamone,
Wait.
second by, who was the seconder on that? Cassetti?
Yep.
Okay, and then discussion, Rivers, hit it.
Okay, my only thing with that there is that that will be the only club that gets $10,000 out of this year. A lot of clubs are not playing right now as far as their games. Like, we're going to be sending out our equipment soon. So to give almost half the fund to one program, and the last time that the girls came, they came for 8,000 and we gave them 5. So now the soccer club is going to get 10.
Well, you have no other requests. This is the end of the fiscal year. Other clubs had the same capability to submit these requests, Chicago, and they didn't.
Yeah, we're getting this in under the wire, and you can't play with 1.5 goals. So it's either 2 new goals or none, I would say.
I get that. All I'm saying is that you're setting a precedent here.
No, it's not.
Really?
We're not
No.
setting a precedent.
Well, Chicago, where were the other sports teams? They knew the fund is here. They know money is there and they have to submit for it. Right? If they play in the summer, they should have requested funding last August or September for equipment or for whatever they had. Right?
Well, he wants to be fair about things, but.
Oh, I get it.
That's it. I mean, you know,
the opportunity is there, Joe. Right? The opportunity is there.
Yeah.
Folks have to submit for it.
No, I agree with you.
I mean, there still remains 5,000 that we would carry over anyway, right?
It wouldn't carry over. It would flush back and we would replenish whatever we approved, which I believe
Right.
got cut for next year.
Starts all over.
Okay. Oh, it got cut though.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got
So
cut.
this is it. This is the last time any club can come to us
Yep.
for now.
Right. Turn the page.
All right. Any other comments? We have the motion in the second. All in favor of approving?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thanks for bringing that one back up. That moves us to the section under the budget.
Oh, the easy stuff.
Yeah, we're getting rolling, right? Budget number 1, discussion and possible action on the budget fiscal year 25-26. We did lay out the parameters.
Before, I talked a little bit in the beginning about how we worked at a solution, right, to get us to where we were last month, or at last meeting, but not having to go into union concessions or layoffs. But before we jump into the budget with Kurt with us, you know, we talked about the audit. We really needed to address the any concern that the audit is late without reason, that the city is hiding something. That is, of course, not the case whatsoever. There is an explanation, and Rich gave a very thorough explanation, and that was followed by a very thorough discussion. We also want to talk about the WPCA funds, because once again, there has been persistent misinformation, right, about the use of the WPCA funds. The mayor talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but Kurt is going to guide us through very simply, once again, the use of the WPCA funds. Where did that money go? And Kurt, as simply as possible for the sake not just of the board, but once again for the residents. And we do believe it's very important, right? The transparency is extremely important, but the persistent messaging is, of course, needs to be addressed. You know, the truth needs to be explained.
So write it down.
And Kurt, I believe,
Yep. Sorry.
screen
Josh, can I have the ability to share my screen?
Yeah, and I can't guarantee no one's gonna doodle on it, but go ahead.
We can't say you do have an ability to screen share. I'm gonna just hold on, make sure that you could screen share.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the doodling before, now that I really realize it, it was yellow doodling. Maybe they were advocates of yellow lines.
Okay.
on the field, and I
Could have
missed.
been.
Okay, so I did some updating. The one that was previously released was designed to be a estimate tool for me, just to give me so I can keep track of everything. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts with all this, but this is one that is all of the actuals. So we will start right here. The balance of 41 million. This first line, line number 5, the city spent $12,969,910.09 paying off the outstanding Clean Water Fund loans. So that brought the balance down to 28 million. In fiscal 24, we used $5 million of revenue for tax stabilization. That saved residents roughly 3.5 mils, or $350 per $100,000 of assessed value. So that money went directly back to residents in the form of tax savings. In fiscal 25, the year that we are currently in, we used $7,429,365, which is the equivalent of 5.21 mils, which save residents roughly $521 per $100,000 of assessed value. So over those 2 years, we save residents $870 per $100,000 of assessed value. That's direct tax relief that goes back to offset taxes paid by the residents. So it's a savings directly back to them.
And so
We then took,
if I could interrupt really briefly, Kurt, if the city did not follow that plan, what would the tax increase be for residents?
it would have been the equivalent of 3.5 mils in fiscal 24 and 5.21 mils in fiscal 25.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is serious money. Again, the mayor's goal is to try to keep taxes as low as possible. 1, to benefit obviously the residents, and 2, to try to attract as much economic development as possible into the city. The next one is line number 9, which is the rate stabilization fund. So $7 million was put aside to offset future increases in WPCA costs and to try to keep those as stable as possible.
Line 8 you skipped.
You skipped the solar
Oh,
carport.
I apologize. Solar carport. So we used $2,380,159 of tax money the WPCA sale funds to offset the cost of the solar carport. So we did not need to borrow any money. So we avoided paying principal and interest costs. This initial investment of $2,380,159 is going to be offset by a tax credit, an investment tax credit that we're going to receive through the federal government of $1,903,000.
Almost $2 million.
Correct. So it made good fiscal sense to use the cash that we had on hand to pay for it, have that money in turn replaced with this investment tax credit that's coming in, not pay any principal and interest costs, and allow us to immediately start to receive the income stream that comes from the solar carports unencumbered. So again, it's taking this one-time asset and turning it into a reoccurring revenue stream. So that's just a smart way to handle things.
So
Number 9. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that like when you get solar panels, that's the rebate from the federal government that comes back
Correct.
to us?
Right.
Do we
Yes.
owe that though to the solar company, or we owe
No.
them nothing now?
We owe them nothing.
Okay,
Yep. Coming back directly to us.
thank you.
You're welcome. Again, the $7 million, as I started to explain that, that is to offset future increases in WPCA costs. We've talked about that a bunch of times. For fiscal 26, we're using $5,250,000. That's the projected use. Again, we won't know what we'll ultimately use in fiscal 26 until we get later on in the year. I would anticipate that it would be amount less than this, but that is a savings of 3.76 mils or $376. So you can see we're north of $1,000 a year over the last 3 years, or excuse me, $1,000 total savings per $100,000 of assessed value over the last 3 years. So again, direct savings to residents.
Kurt, is projected revenue a common occurrence in accounting?
Yes.
It's used all the time.
Yes. Because you're projecting what the revenue stream would be. And then notice there's different terms. There's projected and there's revenue. I know what the amount is in fiscal 24 and 25 because those numbers are finalized. I'm projecting what it could be in fiscal 26, just like our budget. Our budget has a lot of projections in it.
So this is like your best guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and that's understood that it's a normal accounting practice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, welcome. So we used $375,000 to do some capital infrastructure projects. We did some sidewalks, we did some drainage, we did some road work, some things like that. We just cleaned up a few small little issues that we had. So that brings the overall usage or the projected usage, the anticipated usage, whatever word you want to use, leaving us with an amount of $595,565. You then need to add back in the $1.9 million that we'll be receiving in the anticipated investment tax credit for the carports. Right. We also need to add back in anticipated WPCA balance after closeout. So once the WPCA has been completely closed out, we finish up the audit process, everything else. The anticipation is that we'll have about $3.25 million. So that money comes back in, which leaves us with $6,123,565.91. That money, I would recommend that it's immediately moved to increase or add to our existing fund balance. The value of this projected fund balance increase is 8.98% of the fiscal 26 budget. That would sit on top of the roughly 6 million or so, give or take, that we currently have. So that would put our fund balance well over 10%, which is extremely strong for a distressed municipality. So again, the money was used, but the money was used to directly benefit residents, which I think is certainly a positive.
So we squandered it all, basically.
Well, I guess some people would say that it's squandered. I would say that it went directly back to benefit the residents, which is
exactly
what it's there to be used for. We still have a very strong, healthy fund balance, which we've actually improved our fund balance. I think what we've seen is that the WPCA rates have held true to form. There hasn't been a massive spike in costs. Costs are as they have been. We have a rate stabilization fund that'll help keep those costs down over the long term. So I think a lot of good decisions were used for the direct benefit of the residents with these funds.
There's no doubt there's another way to go. There's an alternative, which is to not project ahead, not make these decisions. Obviously, you've been a part of all these projects, right? All these decisions to get where we are. You would have had an easier time by just raising the taxes. Just raising the taxes to 35, 40 mils, and then you would not have these problems. The residents would have the problems. Small businesses would have the problems, right? Our administration calls that a financial emergency. We know there are some critics that call our current situation with lower taxes an emergency. And it's really for the residents to decide which one they would rather live in.
Yeah, and if there's one other issue I can address because it's been kicking around, and I think people are going to say what they want, but I want to talk about the Standard & Poor's report because we were very, very upfront, very honest with what we were looking at doing. And if you go back and if you look at the audit prior to this one, the one back in 22, we started having conversations about the use of fund balance or one-time revenues and things to help keep the mill rate low. And at that time, we were affirmed at the AA minus, and our outlook was neutral. When we had these conversations, S&P had talked about how long this was a viable strategy. Again, we had open and honest conversations. When we came back for the last bond rating, 6-7 months ago, we continue to have those conversations. The most important thing that any bond rating comes with is the actual rating itself. Our rating did not change. And in the current environment that's in the state of Connecticut, financial ratings that stay the same or improve are considered very, very strong. What we've seen is a lot of communities have actually been downgraded with a lot of things that have been going on. People like to focus on the outlook of the what if. And if you look at the exact language that S&P says, it's the negative outlook reflects our view of the city's plan to use proceeds from a one-time asset sale to fund current operations through fiscal 23, which could lead to budgetary stress absent implementation of measures to reduce its reliance on fund balance. Could. It's not saying that it will. And because there is some concern with regards to the could word, that's why they put the negative outlook. If we continue to follow the plan that we have and the plan that we talk through S&P, where we step out of use of one-time revenues over the next 2 years, so for fiscal 29, there is no more use of one-time revenues. There will be absolutely no issue. And at that point, we'll be having conversations with S&P about a ratings upgrade, because at that point, our fund balance will be in the 12 to 13% range. And for a distressed municipality, that is extremely good. The other thing I want to want you to keep in mind, in 2017, Ansonia was the number 2 rated distressed municipality. For 2024, OPM has said Ansonia is the 18th rated municipality. What do you need to do to change your distressed rankings? It's by changing the overall economics of your overall community. So they look at things like housing costs. They look like median household income, so on and so forth. So when you are keeping taxes stable, you make your community more desirable for people to move into. When people start to move into that community, what you see is housing prices start to rise. As housing prices start to rise, people that are moving in to purchase those houses generally have higher median incomes. So by all the steps that have been taken over the last 10, 11, 12 years, they have all led us to this point of significant improvement. People can argue that you don't like the way that it was done. People can argue that I don't understand the way that it was done. But at the end of the day, all that matters are the results. And the results have been extremely positive. To go in just 6 years, 7 years, from number 2 to number 18 is quite significant. And that's something that every resident in this town, every member of these boards should be extremely proud of. I'm quite tired of the finances of this community being used as a political football, because we're turning Ansonia into the laughing stock of the state of Connecticut. And I'm going to say this officially on the record. I look forward and relish the opportunity to go to MFAC in September. Honest to God, I cannot wait, because what's going to happen at that meeting is we're going to do our presentation. The folks at MFAC are going to say, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll see you in 2 quarters. We're not 100% sure why you're even here. I've spent the last 2 days talking with folks up at OPM, preparing for when this meeting will take place. It's September 10th is when Ansonia will have its MFAC meeting. I encourage everyone to tune in. It's a Zoom meeting. It's done live. People are more than welcome to listen and hear what they say. The folks up at OPM are dumbfounded as to why Ansonia is being forced to go to MFAC. It's essentially an incredible amount of legislative overreach. But that's why I'm upset. I'm not upset that I have to go to MFAC. I'm upset at the way that it was done. If you look at the triggers for MFAC, it is extremely clear what OPM is looking for. There are different trigger levels, and the cities are ranked. And if they hit a certain number of triggers, then they qualify to go in. Ansonia has hit exactly one of those triggers. And the only trigger that it's hit, it's because the same thing has been on the audit for 2 consecutive years in a row. And that's that the audit was been late. So of the 8 criteria, we hit exactly 1. We are nowhere near a community that is in need of MFAC. Again, I have absolutely no problem going to MFAC. As I said, I spent a lot of time yesterday and a lot of time today speaking with those folks. We will go up there. We will provide all of the information. They already have our S&P reports. They have our audit reports. They have our budgets. They are completely comfortable with where we stand. But again, MFAC is a group. It's 8 members. It's 3 at large. And then it's 5 financial municipal representatives. I look at this as an opportunity to go and show them what we're doing in Ansonia, talk to them about why we're doing these things, have an open and honest exchange with other financial professionals. I expect that we're going to walk away with some good best practices that we can potentially use. It's essentially 8 other eyes that will be looking at the way we do things. I can assure you that we'll absolutely have no problem with the MFAC review that we'll be doing. So with that, Mr. President, I'll turn it back over to you because I got a little long-winded. It's just extremely upsetting that, again, that we're using the city's finances to try to get some political points, particularly when the people who are making some of the accusations and doing things don't fully understand what it is they're talking about, and quite honestly, don't even have the full support of the leadership of their party.
And as Kurt kind of went over, right, you could disagree with the philosophy, but you can't disagree with the result that it produced. And
Correct.
Of course, when it comes to, moving forward, of course, everyone recognizes there's a need to reduce reliance on fund balance, right? And the way forward is more revenue. And it's either through taxes or it's either through projects that we're setting up like Ansonia Copper and Brass, which is the silver lining, right? It's the light at the end of the tunnel that can produce that money. But the thing is, do you want a philosophy that raises taxes before that's necessary, or a philosophy that only raises taxes when absolutely necessary? And as the mayor articulated very well at the beginning, how are you going to tell the struggling families, how are you going to tell the struggling business owner that we just need to tax, right? Get that mill rate up into the high 30s, into the high 40s, just so we don't have to raise taxes, right? Because that's what you've heard. Why don't we just raise the taxes all along? If it only had been higher this entire time, we wouldn't have to raise them now. But if you stop and think about that, think about the damage that you would have done in that time, since COVID especially. Think about what that higher tax rate, you're talking 5 to 10 mils more, would have done to our residents, would have done to the businesses that are springing back to life. In our opinion, they would have been crushed. But of course, leave that determination up to the residents. It's very possible another administration would simply have preferred to run over its residents with those taxes. And at the end of the day, the smear on the city, it's really a smear on everything this board has done. It's a smear on everything that was done for this community. And if you don't think that that risks what we've accomplished, that could send mixed signals or confusing signals to grant funders, right? Or to financial boards, that could confuse them about the state of Ansonia, that it could compromise us from moving forward as fast as we've moved, then you're wrong. It's dangerous, very dangerous. And to be attacking the city in that way, based on facts that are not correct, based on positions that are not well researched, and apparently based on a refusal to listen to what's being discussed at these meetings, to read the documentation that's been put out, or to even talk to the city, to even pick up the phone or send an email and say, hey, Mayor, Kurt, John, what's going on? Is there an explanation? And we believe the individuals doing this don't want an explanation. They want power and control of City Hall. The problem is, where does it lead to for the residents? Where does it lead for the taxpayers? What is the result of this? Likely the opposite of what we've done for the last 10 years. With that, let's turn to the budget. As I said in the beginning, we were looking for absolutely any way to avoid the harshest possible outcome, which is a loss of employees through layoffs or having to have unions make concessions during difficult times, and through a blend of additional revenue sources, very dependable in terms of looking at the program for out-of-state plates, an initiative to bring in revenue by going after those out-of-state registrations or out-of-city registrations, bringing that uncollected and unaccounted for revenue back to us, and also some other cost reductions, non-wage related, looking at some health benefit lines where there are some savings, and also some other city initiatives and fortunate retirements. We're confident that we can maintain this at a zero increase without having to resort to those harshest measures. And so, Kurt, I'll open the door to the continued discussion. I know there's details in terms of the group setting the expenses, the revenue, and the mill rate for the budget.
Correct. So I don't know who, Tony, if you want to jot these down, if you seem to be the motion person. But the total city expenditures are 29,506,117, which is flat from last year. For the Board of Education, $38,612,089, which is an increase of 2.76%. The total expenses for both the city and the Board of Education, $68,118,206, which is a 1.54% increase over last year. Those are the expenses. The total revenue for the city will be $68,118,206. The new mill rate will be 28.55 mills for real estate and personal property, and 28.55 mills for motor vehicle. The anticipated collection of taxes, that takes into account bad debt allowances and so on, of what we're estimating is $39,796,451.
I missed the end of that, Kurt. Sorry. 39,796,000.
796,451. And that is based off of an increase of 2.99999%, with a total net grand list of $1,422,426,644. You don't need that for any of the motions. But again, how you calculate the 2.99% is off of the total net grand list, not using the bad debt allowance. The bad debt allowance is a budgeting tool that we use to estimate people who don't pay their taxes, so we can try to determine how much actual cash that we're going to receive. And if I can just, while we're here, if I can just have a quick second, I want to talk about the changes in revenue, because some stuff has been posted on social media And I've been said that I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about when it comes to state revenue. When the state of Connecticut decided to put in a cap on the amount of taxes or amount of mill rate that you can have on motor vehicles, they determined that they would provide supplemental revenue when the amount of real estate and personal property was higher than that. So in fiscal 23, we had a mill rate on real estate and personal property of 37.80 and a mill rate of 32.46 on motor vehicles. Because of that spread, the state of Connecticut provided us with some revenue to try to make up the difference. The second that mill rate and personal property goes below the minimum, the state stops making those contributions. So in fiscal 24, the mill rate on real estate and personal property was 26.24, and the motor vehicle mill rate was 32.46. So that was the last year that we would ever get these contributions. Now both mill rates have been reduced down, and we're no longer getting those contributions. Comments have been made online that I don't understand the rules. I don't understand why we're suddenly not getting this, and that the city actively opt out of this program. There is no program to opt into or opt out of. The state set the rules by which you would get this municipal offset grant. And then once you pass certain thresholds, you no longer get it. I can assure you, if I had the ability to still get $750,000 from the state of Connecticut, I would be up there collecting it personally and bringing it back to the city. But unfortunately, because the mill rate has been lowered so much, we are no longer eligible to receive that money. So I just want to make that clear, because that is out on social media, and it just blows my mind that people can say these things when they themselves don't understand how the process works. So again, with that, Tony, I'll turn it back to you.
Just one question, Kurt, and just everything you said, I've been able to follow because we've had conversations, but it sounds like the last part of it, and this is more for clarity than anything else, is we're actually being punished for the success. That's really what it is. By lowering the mill rate, there's the punishment by falling below that threshold by not keeping taxes high, and that's where we lost the $750,000.
That is correct. It's what they call a municipal transition grant. It's to help communities step away from it and bring mill rates down. In fiscal 23, we received $636,000. In fiscal 24, $855,000. We were budgeted for fiscal 25, $750,000. So because we crossed those thresholds, that's the reason why we no longer receive that money. We did not opt out of any program. There is no program to opt out of.
Thanks, Kurt.
All right.
Right, Jones.
Everybody's ready to move this along. So to kind of just reiterate it back, I'll make a motion to accept the city side expenses for fiscal year 25-26. City expenses $29,506,117, which is a 0% increase from the prior year.
Second.
A motion by Mamone, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries on that. Carry on.
Make a motion to accept the Board of Education budget expenses for the fiscal year 25-26 in the amount of, excuse me, $38,612,089, which is a 2.76% increase year over year.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. Carry on.
And then as a housekeeping piece, total expenses are going to be $68,118,206, which is an overall expense increase of 1.54% for the fiscal year 25-26 budget.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Moving to the total revenue line for the fiscal year 25-26 to be set at $68,118,206.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Carry on.
Establishing the new mill rate for the fiscal year 25-26 budget period. The new mill rate will be set at 28.55 mils for real estate and personal property.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We will establish the motor vehicle mill rate for the fiscal year 25-26 for the city of Ansonia at 28.55 mils.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
And then lastly, the anticipated tax collection for the city of Ansonia for the fiscal year 25-26 to be set at $39,796,451, which is a 2.9999% increase year over year.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries again. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I could just through you, I believe Beth Lynch is on. Beth, I'll have the deck built out by tomorrow morning, and I'll send it over to you with the full budget packet.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Kurt, just a moment of recognition for a little spotlight for you, for Richie, for Kim, and anybody who had any sort of hand into, putting this budget together. It's not an easy process. As we know, there's a lot of time, energy, effort, scrutiny, antics that go into it. I'll speak for myself, but hopefully for the board, we appreciate your efforts in this.
Thank you.
No, thank you. All the credit goes to Richie and Kim and Franny and Marianne and Anna. They're kind of the horsepower behind all this. So they give me everything that I need to let me put this together. So I have to share and give most of the credit to them. They're a very deserving group.
Pass along our recognition, please.
I absolutely will.
Thank you.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Motion to go into executive session by Rivers, second by Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
What do you want in here?
John, who do we
Start off with, and there are some individuals out there who we're going to bring in. We heard one resident on the blight issue. Attorney Dominic Thomas is here as well. But before we let anybody in, we're going to have the board go in, and then I'll come back out, or we'll send someone back out, or I'll give you an invite from within the room. And if you're looking to go in and you're in the waiting room, you'll see an invite to the room. You have to click it to get in.
Okay, thank you.
Will it work?
Perfect.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Rivers to come out of executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So in executive session, we had 7 items to discuss. I'll go through them in order. Number 1, the issue of 22 Silver Hill Road versus Ansonia. What's your pleasure?
Motion to take no action.
Second.
Motion to take no action by Yaman, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Number 2, negotiation of Shelton Development Corporation.
Make a motion to proceed as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion to proceed is discussed by Yaman, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 3, negotiations regarding operations manager / personnel director.
I'll make a motion to proceed as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion to proceed is discussed by Yaman, second by Tar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then we had 4 items under blight litigation. I'll do those in order as well. 4A, 35 Main Street.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the suspension of the lien for 90 days.
Motion to authorize suspension of a lien for 90 days by Yaman,
Second.
second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. 4B, 66 Hull Street.
Motion to proceed is discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion to proceed is discussed. Yaman, second Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 4C, 77 Grove Street.
Motion to proceed is discussed in executive session.
Proceed is discussed by Yaman,
Second.
second by Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And the last one, 4D, 116A Jewett Street.
Motion to take no action.
Second.
Motion to take no action by Yaman, second by Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All in favor was unanimous.
Motion
Hi,
to adjourn.
Rivers. Second.
Adjournment, Rivers and Tar is the seconder. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Long
you.
night. Appreciate it.
Aye.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Everybody.
Some rest.